5 o'clock. Pledge allegiance?
Yep. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Did anyone happen to bring the community prayer?
Nope. You have a march?
I do not. I did not bring it.
I guess we won't be doing that tonight then.
All right. Well, Jeff, why don't we turn it over to you to kind of kill a little time until the chairman gets here?
Okay.
And then we can go back to reorganization once he gets here, and you can introduce yourself to, I know we've got at least 2 new members here that have never met you.
Okay.
And obviously, there's some members of the general public that are curious what's going on.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn? No.
Nice try.
So thanks. It's a pleasure to be here again in Carver. I've been here a couple times before in the past. Just for folks that haven't met me by way of background, this is my 43rd year in local government. I've chaired a finance committee, I've chaired a board of selectmen, I've chaired a school committee and lots of other local committees in my career. I spent most of the 80s doing interim administration where I travel from town to town and fill in for 6 months or whatever timeline when there was a vacancy, and began doing consulting for communities across the Commonwealth, as well as starting facilitation services in the mid-80s and continue to do that today. My last interim job was the Commissioner of Public Works for the City of Cambridge, which was really fun. Never a dull moment in the People's Republic. And then I went on to be the town administrator in Stoneham from '92 to 2001, and the town administrator in Franklin from 2001. So I tell you all that because I just had a long career in a wide variety of roles and responsibilities. I've probably worked for 80 elected officials. I don't know exactly. I've in my career, as well as done this for, I don't know, 40, 50, 60, countless number of communities across the Commonwealth. My job is not to come here and tell you how to run your community, what's in your best interest. My job is to facilitate a discussion about roles and responsibilities, what folks would like to accomplish, how everybody plays nice in the sandbox, despite legitimate differences. There's 5 individuals here. You all come to the table with good intent. You run for office because you care about your community. You get elected. They give you a sign and a seat. And now, okay, you're fully qualified because a lot of boards, it's a lot of, there's a huge learning curve on the Board of Selectmen. And it can be lots of fun and very rewarding, or as well as frustrating. And some of that is way out of your control as the economy goes up and down and you want to get things done, as well as in your control as people try to work together for the benefit of the citizens. So my job today will facilitate a discussion. I might offer some advice or suggestions or comparisons from communities across the Commonwealth, but at the end of the day, I leave town and you lead this community. So that's kind of my introduction. Happy to answer any specific questions, but we'll go through the agenda when the chair shows up.
Let me just go around and just reintroduce the
Yeah, that'd be great.
members that you haven't met before, but we'll start with Alan because he can start.
Alan Dunham, member of the Board of Selectmen, starting the year number 6.
And
I
Alan,
have survived.
what else have you done in the town, just for perspective for,
Well, I've been part of the Old Home Day, our annual celebration.
Oh, cool.
Putting on the clam bake. I've been an assistant bake master for a while. And I also have 20 years in Carver Fire Department. Started off as a lowly firefighter and was up at Company 1 in Company 2 in North Carver, and retired as a lieutenant when my doctor said I couldn't play anymore.
Okay.
So when I got done with that, I was like, what can I do now? And so then I was lucky enough to be elected twice by the residents of town to the Board of Selectmen.
Great. I know.
Elaine Weston, Assistant Town
Yeah.
Administrator.
he knows the boss.
Sarah Hewins, I'm in my 10th year, Selectman, my 4th term.
Excellent.
I served for
Sarah,
15
can you speak up?
I served, yes, I'm sorry. I'm in my 10th year as a member of the Board of Selectmen. I served for 15 years as the Downs Conservation Agent and 10 years as a member, an elected member of the Planning Board.
Oh, good.
And various other.
Excellent.
My name's Robert. Good examples is, we had a, what, $100,000 a year
Yes.
from a solar project that is going directly to offsetting the cost of the debt exclusion for the elementary school.
Okay.
So we were able to help lower people's taxes by applying it to that. And that's, you can argue that's a one-time, but that's gonna be the debate for us. We've got a lot of departments that are desperate for money.
Right.
And it would be easy for us to accord that money to go to them, but in 20 years, where we may not be in the board.
Melvin, the newest selectman here. I was on the redevelopment authority, elected twice. I just resigned my position there to become selectman.
Great.
Been involved in Boy Scouts here in town for many, many years. And I'm ready to,
Rock and
Ready to
roll.
go.
Good for you.
I'm Mark Townsend, I was elected last year. Prior to that, I was on the FinCom,
Okay.
on the Playground Committee, and coached a whole bunch of youth sports teams.
Yeah, you're finally warming up? Well, congratulations, everybody. You have a great community. I've been here, I look at the school, I look at this, I look at all the things you've accomplished. So, congratulations.
Let me burn a little more time and introduce the audience out there. If we just go around just so that Jeff Nutting is aware. So we start over on the far side. That's you.
I'm Emily Stile, I live at 195 Meadow. I've only lived in this town for 4 years. I grew up in Michigan, and
Oh.
I lived in New Jersey for a long time, and I have survived my first ever town
I was going to say, yeah.
in 2 parts, so I am here as a learner.
Great.
My name's Betty Sullivan. I live at 28 Roosevelt Bridge. I've been in Carver 9 years. I came from Plymouth, originally from South Boston.
Oh, city slicker that went south, huh? Good for you.
I'm Nancy Ryan. I also live in Cranberry Village. I've been in Carver for probably 15 years.
Okay.
I'm originally from Dorchester.
No, oh, good.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Oh, me. Donna Forand, and I was born and raised in this town. And my father was born in the house I was raised in.
Wow.
And I'm the chairman of the Commission on Disability.
Okay.
And the vice chairman of the Council on Aging Board of Directors.
Wow, good.
Alan Germain, I'm the chairman of the Finance Committee.
Okay,
I've been here for 21 years.
great.
Peter Allegrini, South River Road. I'm a business owner. I have 2 children in the school system.
Oh, great.
A business owner here in town. I went to the Plymouth Carver school systems when Plymouth was an extension of Carver and Carver was an extension of Plymouth. So most of the people in this town I went to school with.
Oh, great.
And I'm Kathy Gallerani. I'm a reporter.
Okay.
Carver reporter.
Great. All right.
How
So,
long have you worked there?
A lot of years. For the paper, yeah.
so I have to ask, which parish? Because if you're from Dorchester, everybody had a parish, right?
Oh, it's always the parish, isn't it? St. Peter's.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. That's the first thing we say,
Yeah,
what parish you're from.
that's right. I had a lot of friends.
How are you, sir?
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
My apologies, everyone. Traffic jam, accident down in Providence.
Well, you got your seat.
So, Mr. Chairman, the board has gone through the Pledge of Allegiance. We skipped the reorganization and went to Jeff Nutting to do introductions, which the board, he introduced himself, the board introduced themselves, and as well as the public. So I think we're back to the item 505 on the agenda because no one brought the community prayer unless you have that with you.
I do have that, of course.
Because Alan was looking to read it.
All right. Almighty God, humbly we pray your blessings as we concern our life with the opportunity to serve our community. Enhance us with your spirit of dignity and selflessness. May we become instruments of support and understanding as we seek to bring an environment of trust and purpose among all who provide the many services that make us all that we can become. Help us achieve the goals of our commitment in this office that is now our responsibility. And especially, we lift our prayers for all the citizens of our community that we have been allowed to serve, that they may discover the fullness and joy of life that we all seek. And keep those serving in our armed forces and our first responders in our hearts and prayers. Amen.
Thank you.
Would you like me to proceed with nominations for reorganization?
That would seem to be appropriate.
All right. Are there any nominations for chairman of the Board of Selectmen?
I nominate Ron Clark.
I second it.
Is there any other nominations? Having a motion and a second, is there any discussion? No discussion? All right, then I guess we'll move that to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Mr. Chairman, you have the floor back.
All right. First of all, let me turn my chair. I feel uncomfortable with people staring at my...
You know what? Guess what?
Move over here.
Oh, there you go. I'll do that. Plus, it's an occupational hazard. It's sort of like Wyatt Earp, back to the door. All right, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so I think probably, Jeff, have you explained what's going on tonight, what the purpose of tonight is? And
Do you need like a vice chair or a...
pardon me? Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Or one of those kind of people?
All right, I'm still in traffic fatigue. All right, we'll take nominations for vice chair at this point in time.
I nominate Mark Townsend as vice chair.
Any seconds? Further discussion? Any other nominations? Being none? Any discussion? Being none? Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it. All right, thank you very much. That take care of everything? The reorganization? Okay, so we have with us facilitator Jeff Nutting, and how many times have you been with us now?
2 or 3, I was.
I think it's at least 3.
This is the third or fourth. Third.
And it's something that's a lot of boards do, and Jeff is a selectman in...
No, I was.
You were?
Yeah.
But Jeff has a history as being a selectman, and the idea is that selectmen sort of take turns, with the skill set of helping other towns establish goals and objectives for the coming year, because it's important for the board to sort of understand, in addition to its general mission of just running the business of the town, what are we trying to achieve over the coming year? What's important? What would we like to see the town administrator achieve, and what do we as a board want to achieve? So that's going to be the purpose, and Jeff basically facilitates that sort of discussion. So with that, Jeff, I'm going to turn it over to you.
It's great to be back here. What a beautiful building. Congratulations to you. So we had done 1 and 2 on the agenda, and the next one, what are members supposed to accomplish? And so what do we...
Just to the public, if you sent that questionnaire, just so they know the process you went through there.
Oh, okay. So generally, what happens is I send out a questionnaire prior to the meeting with a series of questions so that I can save a lot of time at the meeting by getting information ahead of time that the board wants. I get a list, I collate it, it's not word for word, but get the general idea and sense of what members have sent in, and then we'll go through that tonight. So otherwise I'd spend an hour doing all that and less time doing this. So that's my standard fare with every community that I work with. So
And you got something back from all of us, right?
I've got everybody responded in a timely fashion. So maybe you guys can help me. Why? What would you like to accomplish tonight as a board?
But I mean, again,
I know you have goals, responsibilities.
Yep.
I mean, is there anything beyond the agenda that folks want to put on the table? We have a long list. I got a lot of great responses.
I'd sort of defer to Bob as a new member. He may have questions that we've sort of dealt with but are new to him, so that, I'd encourage you just to, any questions you have, just to bring up through the course of the night, because...
Great. Okay, then we'll just move on to roles and responsibilities. I don't know, I guess we're gonna go this way, huh? Unless you belong down to the wall.
I can walk him around.
Here. didn't realize, usually when I do this, we have no audience, so I apologize. In other communities, so that's great, everybody's here. So, I asked everybody, what are the three most important jobs of the board, and got excellent responses. Wise and frugal spending, fiscal viability, including revenue, growing the revenue base, oversight of all aspects of government, acting as a bridge between the town and the community, listening and communicating to citizens in a straight, transparent, factual way, active civic engagement, advocating for towns on behalf, with state officials, looking out over 5, 10, or 20 years as to just what we're doing tomorrow, safety of residents, doing what is in the best of the whole town, not just a local few, evaluate issues and make decisions. So there's no wrong answers there. There's a long list, but if you had to pick three, you said, what is the role of the board? Obviously, these are functions, but if you look at a board of directors, whether it's a school board, a not-for-profit board, a board of selectmen, and you say, what are the three most primary things that we need to do as a board? One would be hire the person that's going to do your work. So in the case of a school, it's a superintendent. In the case of the town, it's a town administrator. If it's a not-for-profit corporation, whoever the person is, the CEO, the CFO, etc. So that, that task is done. Task 2 is to set goals and policies. Where we going and how we get there. Where are we going to take this community in the future? What are our challenges? What are our opportunities? And what are we going to set as things that we need to accomplish? When I work with some boards, they just go from crisis to crisis because they've never done this before. And if you sit down and say, here's the 5 things, 8 things we want to get done this year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, you start to have a vision and you get feedback from the community and start to collate, what are the critical issues that this community faces going forward. And the last thing is to solve problems that no one else can solve. So the Board of Selectmen is legally obligated to take a lot of actions, licenses, hearings, et cetera. But also, you're the, if someone calls to fix a pothole, hopefully the DPW fixes it. If that doesn't work, they call the town administrator. If that doesn't work, they come to the Board of Selectmen. You're the arbiter of last resort on many issues that if people don't get satisfaction, they can always come to the board. So in some cases, you are absolutely the first folks that people have to because you're obligated by law, either by law, state law, to do certain things. In other cases, you're the last person that people should go through because they should go through a chain of command. That's hard when you get elected because citizens voted for you, they pick up the phone and say, I need this done, I want this done, will you get this done? And what's unelected officials' natural action? You want to help people, correct? But when are you legally a selectman?
All the time.
You're legally a selectman when you sit at a posted meeting. You have no authority outside that meeting as an individual. You certainly can advocate for people, you can take...
That just came up today, as a matter of fact, in discussions.
Well, you can advocate for people, you can ask the TA to do something, you can meet, but ultimately, just like any other elected body, you have to be sitting at a posted meeting to have authority to raise your hand. Now, you can be assigned by the board, obviously, hey, can you go to this meeting and check out X, Y, and Z? Or we represent the town up at the State House when we have to meet with somebody. But as far as legal action, you have to be at a posted meeting. And that's, again, a struggle because everybody sees you as a selectman full-time. Down the post office, you're getting a coffee, you're at the ball field. You are a selectman, but you can't take independent action. And that's hard to adjust to. But it's something that everybody learns that ultimately, hey, I get a vote, I get to raise my hand, I'm 1 of 5 people. If 5 people agree, 4 people agree, or 3 people agree, it moves ahead. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And that can be very frustrating if you want to try to get things done, but knowing you have to play by the rules according to law. Questions, comments?
Yes.
Sure.
All right, so the first part, you actually said the role is to hire the town administrator.
Right.
And once we hire the town administrator, we also have a process of reevaluating the town administrator of his duties and whatnot.
I would hope so.
And doesn't that include observing how he does his job?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there should be a set of goals for the town administrator on an annual basis. The board evaluates the performance, you know, once a year or however each community. Sometimes they give it mid-year, sometimes a full one. And that's critical because you want ongoing communication on a two-way street of, hey, this is what the board thinks needs to be better, this is, we're doing this great, maybe we should go a little this way. So absolutely, because you're the hiring authority, that's important that take place on an annual basis. Absolutely. And I don't know what the process is here or what the time, you know, some people do it in June, some do it depending on the community, but the idea is to set goals that you all agree on as a board, all in favor, and then either do a gut check after 6 months and say, hey, doing great here, not so good here, needs improvement, whatever the issues are, and then after a year do a formal one, however you folks agree to do it. Does that help? Yeah.
Just to follow up, Bob, on today's specific example, because I think it's worth discussing. There was a department head meeting today, and Bob went to attend. And, you know, I've never gone to one. If I'd been in town hall sometime, I could see where I'd want to pop in and so forth. But when Bob went to go, he was advised that it's a private meeting and you can't attend. And initially, that sort of surprised me, because I would have thought that a selectman could sit in on that. And then I called Bob and I mentioned this to him when I went back to, like, you know, my early years on the board. Almost what you started out saying is that as a member of the Board of Selectmen, the only time I have any authority is when I'm actually, when the board is in session, or if the board appoints me to act on their behalf. And what they drilled into me at the MMA, you know, Selectmen introductory meeting is that any other time, I don't have any more rights or privileges than any other citizen in the town. And that then leads to the question of, when private meetings are going on in town hall, does a citizen have the right to attend? And that's sort of where we're in the mix of discussion right now. So that, I don't know if you can shed any light on that.
I mean, citizens have a right to come to a posted meeting.
But what if it's a department head meeting, it's not posted? Or what if it's the planning board is having their monthly meeting just with staff?
Well, if it's a board, it's a public meeting. If it's a one person, it's not.
Well, when I say board, I'm sorry, I should say the department head with his immediate employees as opposed to the planning board, if you see what I'm saying.
No, I mean, citizens don't have even a right to sit in.
Well, I mean, that's what we were getting into.
They have a right to come to any hearing or public meeting, and in a public hearing, they get a right to speak. In a public meeting, it's at the decision of the chair, as you know, or unless you go to local bylaw that says otherwise. That's, or the board has a policy that says, you know, citizens can speak for 5 minutes or 2 minutes or 20 minutes.
Right, no, but we're talking specifically that when private meetings are taking place where there's no quorum present in the town hall, do citizens have the right to attend?
No, not under any law.
So with that being said, as a selectman, where you have to evaluate the town administrator and his duties and how he's doing his job, okay? Wouldn't it be reasonable to observe a meeting or two, all right, to see how he conducts himself during a meeting and if what's going on is going on, and not to be included in it, but just as an observer?
Speaking specifically the example of the department head meeting, let's say, where there's no quorum present.
The town administrator should be evaluated on the goals that the board sets and whether those are achieved or not. Not necessarily how they're achieved, obviously they're better of a law, but so if you say these are the 10 things you need to get done, then you should evaluate the performance and whether those were done. Now, if something was, we get this done and town meeting approves it, and town meeting doesn't approve it, obviously you can't accomplish the goal. But so I mean, traditionally, that's how a board would evaluate. You set expectations, and the TA meets those expectations or not. Not necessarily how that gets done. Besides, there's no secrets in the big house. Right? This is, every town's small, everybody knows what's going on, there's always information flying around, whether it's true or not. But normally that wouldn't take place.
Well, no, I was just gonna say, in this regard, you know, we're talking the town administrators with his operational staff, the department heads. And I could see where if Mr. Clark was sitting in or Bob was sitting in, that might stifle some of the free flowing, because when you're in these type of meetings, you expect and need free flow from the people that are working for you on how their departments are doing or whatnot. And it just, to me, common sense, that, you know, you don't want to interfere with that free flow of information.
Again, that's really ultimately the town administrator. If he says, hey, everybody gets to come to one meeting a year, that's up to him. If not, you know, unless the board's going to vote to say we get to go to meetings, but you are going to generally undermine the day-to-day free flow of information. Because everybody, you're seen differently. The day, you almost have more rights as a citizen than you do as a selectman in some ways. Because you have to follow all these rules.
Excellent point.
You know, and whereas if you're a citizen, you know, you get almost easier access in some points. So it is frustrating, having been sat in your seat.
So it's easier to run for selectman than to be selectman.
Other questions, because you know these are important. People need to.
I just think that being able to observe what's going on and how it's being done is part of our job of evaluators. Just like a teacher would get evaluated, other job of duties get evaluated.
The teacher would be evaluated by the principal, the superintendent, not the school committee. And you're the school committee in this case.
Correct.
Right.
But we also have to know what's going on in our town.
Right.
And sometimes people aren't notified of what's going on in the town.
Well,
So that, where the communication breakdown is there, so.
So one of the things the board, and I don't know what the communication gap is, but one of the things the board considered as a goal is come up with a criteria for what you believe as a board is reasonable communication. You know, what information you want the citizens to know and how to easily access that information in a timely fashion. You can certainly set a goal as a board to achieve that. But in the school situation, you know, again, the school committee evaluates the superintendent. They don't get to evaluate the teacher or anybody else down below. So you get to evaluate the TA, but
How can you evaluate him if you can't see him in action?
Did he get his job done? Did he meet the goals? That's what you have to work on, at least from my understanding.
Now, Bob brought up a point today that I thought was interesting about talking to some other selectmen in other towns where they actually put out like a weekly or bi-weekly, what have I been up to from the town administrator? And that actually might have some merit because, you know, different selectmen check in on, you know, different towns on a regular basis, irregular basis. So, you know, not to burden you with additional responsibilities, but I think it's worthy of consideration that maybe just in a regular, you know, if you want to make it bi-monthly or whatever, that.
so can I, first of all, I suggest that, A, no votes get taken tonight.
No, we're just, this is just.
Discussion, but if there's a consensus to move forward, you flush it out at the next meeting or two.
Right.
On whatever topics you agree to. So if the board says we ought to put an item on the agenda about community outreach, you can say, okay, let's put on this on the next agenda, or however you ultimately come up with a list, and say, you know, communication is so challenging today in the world of social media because everybody gets their information from different sources. So if the goal is to get out a weekly, monthly, whatever newsletter or, you know, one-page bullet, that would be up to the board to set a goal.
So, if I may, I think, I see Bob's point though, and it is it's a conundrum, I don't know the answer, but, so there, yeah, you could say it's whether he accomplished his goals, he or she, whoever the TA is. But there's ways to accomplish a goal, and there are other ways to accomplish a goal. And some of the ways that a goal gets accomplished may not be the way that we might like them to be accomplished. So there are ways to do things? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah.
So it's really still a question. How, if we can't evaluate how something gets done, how do we do a really
So first of all,
good evaluation?
there's no restriction for individual board members to sit down with the TA and say, you know, tell me about this. So not as a board, but individually, you can say, you know, what's going on, you know, people come in, give me an update, what's going on. So that's one way. It's really about honest communication, without, you know, you don't want to have a, because you could have 5 different board members with 5 different expectations how to accomplish something. Well, I can't be running around with 5 different ideas in my head when I'm trying to accomplish something. When I work for I don't work for you individually, I work for the board. So, right, because that's who my bosses are. But on the other hand, you can go in and say, hey, I heard this on the street, or what's going on? And I don't see there's any barriers to that. As an individual, it's a great way to catch up on things. Direct communication. Because, you know, the world's full of rumor, innuendo, Facebook, Instagram, social media, you don't know what's true, what's not true. Go to the source. That's what I say.
You know, taking it a step further, you could have 5 people watch the same meeting and have 5 different interpretations of who was doing what well and what was doing stuff not well. It's all from your own personal perspective. So, you know, it's really hard to get anything accomplished by going and just watching the meeting, because you could say, I didn't like the way he handled that. But if someone else watching that same meeting said, yeah, okay, he had good control and he's getting the most out of his people. So it's a very subjective thing.
But I think if you just go in and sit down,
Right.
you can at least get direct information. I mean, that's the best way to get information. Because maybe in meetings 2 weeks from now, and you want to know something, come up, pick up the phone, send an email, not to all. Be cognizant of the open meeting laws, because people get caught in those by mistake. So that's a way to find out what's going on. Whether you think that the goals is being accomplished maybe in a way you wouldn't do it, is not as relevant as what the board wants to get accomplished. As long as no one's breaking the law, breaking ethics, doing, as long as they're doing it, but one person's style might be different than another person's style, but what's the end result? And, you know, there's a lot of grumbling, you're gonna hear about it. Let's be honest. You know, there's no-
Well, I've got a note to put the TA newsletter on our next agenda to discuss.
So you start a list. Okay. And that gives everybody a while to think of, to give Mike a chance and board members a chance, you know, what's it gonna look like? You know, how often, because there's only so many hours in the day. And you know what? The other issue is, as you set these goals, I always suggest that, you know, you do a gut check. You set some goals, and then 6 months later, you put everything back on the agenda and say, hey, this newsletter's good, or, you know what, we should change it a little. Or whatever you decide, you just don't let things drift off, because you get inundated with so many issues that you don't even know about. So you plan for all these other ones, and then reality hits. And now you're up to your eyeballs in these other things, and you forget. And so it's good to keep everybody reminded of the things that you want to accomplish, despite all the barriers. Questions, concerns, ideas? Okay, so I did ask everybody what some accomplishments were. You had I drove by your school. Oh my God, it's beautiful in this building. You've got a lot of good things done. I only ask that because a lot of people sometimes struggle getting a big list, because in reality you have lots and lots of meetings, you spend hours and hours and hours. But if you ask the average citizen in Carver, what got done 3 years ago? How many people could answer? Right? So it's all about keeping things in perspective. You know, you've been around for 220 years, I don't know how long you've been in Carver.
1790.
What? 220 years, right? 230 years? Issues come and go, people come and go, problems come and go. So in the big scheme of things, if you can get some things accomplished to make the community a better place to live, you should pat yourself on the back, because no one else is gonna. And say we've got a lot of good things, but keep it in perspective, because things are just, life moves on. And not everything is a crisis.
And that's my 40 years. You know, when I was young, everything was a crisis, and now you have perspective to look back. So congratulations on what you've got done, and keep moving forward. So the next thing is,
Thank you, sir.
what's the role of each member? And how can the board be more effective? And so I think one of the beginning discussion was great. So response is the chair and vice chair communicate with the TA prior to meetings, in town meetings, to ensure everyone has all the information. I'll run all these through and then we'll come back. Work in the best interest of the town, not personal agendas. So listen to support criticism of the board, support those decisions once they're made, even if not in favor. Actually listen to fellow board members and just trying to think of what to say next. I think we're all guilty of that in life sometimes. Respect each other, staff and citizens. Each board should stand up for what they believe is right, each board member, and a diverse board makes a better board. I certainly agree that a diverse board makes a better board. If you have different constituents and different things in the community and bring all that together, then you have a wide array of opinions to bring to the table. I think that's excellent. But if we go back, communication, someone wants to make sure there's better communications for the meetings. Problem, not a problem, someone put it down. I collated these, I didn't say who said what. So who's looking for better, has that been an issue? Do people feel they aren't getting 100% of the information prior to a meeting?
Well, this says specifically chair, vice chair communicate with TA prior to meetings.
Right. So I don't know what the policy, what the practice is now, how it works.
Well, normally the town administrator and the chair work together to come up with an agenda, and then that is sent out to the chair and the vice chair for review, and then sent back to the TA with any suggestions or modifications or fine, go ahead.
And then that goes out to everybody, whatever,
Right.
how many days in advance. Is that a sufficient time frame for everybody?
Normally, it's coming out on a Thursday or Friday before the next meeting, with the package usually attached to it.
Okay.
And during a meeting, any member can request that something be an item on the next agenda,
Right, okay.
so that we're open to that.
Right, because you can't bring it up in a meeting, under the open meeting law.
You can mention that you'd like to have it added to a
Right,
future
right.
agenda, yeah.
Okay. But does anybody foresee a change or need to change the current system? Okay. The rest of these are in the general category of board working as a, despite legitimate, when you run for office, you run as an individual, and you all want to do the right thing, but now you're on a board, so you have to respect differences of opinion. They're healthy. Everybody should have the right to, speak their piece, what they think is in the best interest of the town, and stand up for that. But at some point, vote's taken. And I've always been interested, having been on I hear people been on different boards, maybe not-for-profit organizations in town or church or things like that. And, you have these debates and discussion, and the group makes a decision, and then life moves on. But I see a lot in the public sector where people don't move on after decisions made. And I guess it's your right to do that. The question is, that's why there's 5 people. Having served on committees myself, I could be on the short end of a stick, vote after vote, but after that, we'll have a beer and life goes on. But that's an individual, people have to, decide, how do I be on a board, fight for what I believe in, and then ultimately, where do I go if I don't get my way? That's a tough thing, because you get bombarded in the street. I thought you were doing the right thing. Well, the rest of the board didn't, or those are knuckleheads. So it's really about respect for people's differences. And I don't know if you guys are great at it, bad at it. But I read all these things, and there's issues. if I read all these as a group of what's going on. So how do you want to work together? Without you. I've worked with boards, one guy says, I don't care, I'll never vote with you forward no matter what happens. Okay, let's show it. You don't have to do it. No, that's, you know.
I mean, my experience has been that the only expectation I've ever had is everyone votes their conscience. Just,
Right.
they agree or they don't. And I'd say 99 times out of 100, that even if there's a dissenting vote, that for the most part, the board as a whole embraces whatever the decision was and moves forward to the next one. So that there are exceptions, but
Okay.
that's, I'd say, generally the way we operate.
Anybody agree, disagree?
I'd say generally it's about having respect for each other. We all have different opinions, but when the vote is taken, you just respect the members of the board. So,
Anybody else? And I see, actually listen to fellow members. People don't, respect each other. I mean, you put all these things down. These weren't one person. So what's the underlying current? Or is it, I mean, I didn't make this up.
I think some of this may tie into the code of conduct later too.
Okay.
Most likely to have, unless there's any more discussion on this one.
Okay, well, I think.
Heck, I'm brave. What the heck? For me personally, and I could be off base on this, but, have a lively, spirited debate, listen to what the other people on the board are saying. But once the board reaches a decision, that's the decision of the board. And it would bother me immensely to go ahead and be glancing through social media after we'd done this and watching, I expect the public to bash us if they didn't like what we did. But I'd have a real problem if a member of the board was going on there bashing the rest of his or her board members because they didn't agree with the decision the board made. I mean, whether you like it or not, I mean, that's, to me, when you become a selectman, you do become part of a team. We're supposed to, try to work better together as best we can to come up with what's best for the town. And it's like, yeah, we're gonna have differences of opinion. We're not gonna agree. It's just the nature of the beast. But you have to be able to either, once in a while adjust your thinking sometimes because you're not always right. I know I'm not always right. And by the same token, you have to realize that, sometimes you have to be willing to change your mind. Too often I see people getting into discussions and they're stuck with, I'm right, you're wrong. And that's not really a good way to get to a best solution. That's just my thoughts.
Well, social media is a game changer in this world today. So it is hard. So
I think one of the best examples of what you're talking about that I can think of is we had a really difficult hearing a couple of years ago with the redevelopment authority wanted to be granted the right of eminent domain for an urban renewal project we have going on in North Carver. And we had a big hearing on it, and we heard from both sides on the issue. And ultimately, the board voted to provide the RDA with the right of eminent domain if it needed to use it, and we're still hoping that it never comes into play. And the board was a 4-to-1 vote. And the one member was contacted by the Boston Globe for that local section where they do a pro and, one yes or no. And that board member decided, you know what? The board voted 4-to-1 in favor, and, I was against, but I'm not going to, continue the public fight. The board's made the decision and opted not to participate, even after being contacted by the Globe in it. So I think that's a good example of someone, we had a spirited discussion. There was a lot of debate and discussion on it, and, Helen Maroney at the time decided that she was not going to contest the board, and that the board made the decision. She's going to accept it and move forward. And I think in a perfect world, that's where I'd like to see it. I know that emotions can run high on certain issues, and it might be difficult at times to do that, but it's certainly what I've always tried to do if I'm on the losing side of a vote. Most recently we had a nuisance law, and I really thought there was a need for something in town, and, there just was no support in the board for it. And,
Life goes on.
low man on the totem pole, we move on to the next issue.
Yeah, I do. I mean, to go along, I'm one of those social media people, okay? And I'm sure a lot of them don't like any speaking out. And that's one of the things is, just because you're a selectman doesn't mean you cannot speak out. The code of conduct, I mean, I was on the RDA, I voted against it because it stifled your ability to freedom of speech. And I know there's limitations on it with the open meeting law. Totally understand that. Comply with it. But if I vote against something and everyone does it, the board made the decision, that's fine. But I may not like it, and I may speak out against it, say, I don't like it. All right, they made the decision, that's fine, no problem. Okay, I had my vote, I used my vote the way I wanted to use it. And that's your ability to do that. The code of conduct, I think, is, it stifles.
So that's on the
Speech.
agenda later.
Yeah.
Because,
So-
I mean, one person put down, find a way to amend it to see if people can feel more comfortable with it. So I think there's open discussion about how to do it. So all I can say is there's a difference between right and wisdom. You have every right in America to speak up and speak your mind. The question is, in the long run, if board members are attacking decisions outside the meeting, does that build a good relationship as you move along from issue to issue? Because the next issue, you might be on the winning side and somebody else is it, and they start, and pretty soon you're fighting each other on social media, and to what end? How does that make the citizens better? Because we know what happens is people, at the end of the day, we're all here because we want to help the citizens. And sometimes it's hard to put your ego aside. And so that's going to be up to individual members. I'm not here to police everybody. But you have to think, is this in the best interest of the town overall? Or if you want to, you say you have every right to have your say. I'm not going to tell anybody they don't. But you have to figure that out, what's the best way to have a good working relationship, ultimately, despite legitimate differences. So, enough said about that. Any other comments? If not, we'll move on. So, how can the board be more effective? Better communication. You just talked about an idea that you were going to put on the agenda. More transparent, more open to feedback. So, I guess the idea of coming up with some communications, whether it's to the community, will be on your agenda. Does anybody have thoughts outside of that? That we already talked about, when they put better communication, more transparency, more open to feedback. So, just move it, trying to figure out how to reach out to more citizens in a timely fashion. Is that what Aaron proposed?
I would think so, because if you're not getting, and I'll agree with Bob on this one, if you're not getting the information out there, they're going to assume the worst. They're going to assume.
Well, you make up your own.
Right, they're going to assume there's a backroom deal going on, whether, even if there's not. But if you get the information how it got out there, it comes out from us to let everybody know that, hey, we know what's going on, and this is what's going on, and yes, we're watching it, and whatever the heck it is. So I think we need to do more of that. It's, to get it out there so the public knows what's happening.
Okay.
I mean, we could all, sure, we'll know what's going on, but it doesn't do the citizens who we're supposed to be working for a whole heck of a lot of good if we don't let them know.
Okay.
One other thing I'd throw out there, and this is something that I'll have to give Mr. Allegrini grudging credit for, was the idea that the board, because when we have our meetings, they're business meetings, and we have some citizen participation at the beginning, but it's really intended for the board to conduct its business. So maybe once a quarter, we have, like a CNN town meeting, or town hall meeting, where the 5 of us get together, or whoever can make it, and we, maybe we have it here, or maybe we have it at one of the parks, and just invite people to come and just ask questions. And, because a lot of times at our regular meetings, we can't take a lot of citizen questions other than, and we limit citizen participation to 10 minutes because we're there for a business meeting. We're not there for an open meeting. So maybe quarterly meeting where we, and I'll give credit to some of the selectmen, they've tried to have office hours, which have met with limited success, I think in general. That's sort of lonely times for some of them. But at least if we made the effort to be out there and just able to answer questions, whoever it might be, whoever it's directed to, or get an opinion from all of us, and we do that maybe once a quarter, we can at least say to critics that might question, what's going on, hey, we're doing these quarterly meetings, we're trying to have outreach, that combined with maybe a newsletter and so forth, will help, lift the veil that people think that, there's some sort of, conspiracy or something going on, and be as transparent as we can be.
Might I ask that we add that to the agenda for the next meeting to go along? Because that's along the same lines of
It sounds to me
the,
like you're gonna try to come up with a
talking about having one quarterly.
game plan that's multifaceted in a way to
I didn't mean grudgingly, Peter, but.
figure out.
And I think that's the key. I think communication, we have to communicate on a number of different levels, because everybody out there communicates at a number of different levels, whether it's Michael now, or somebody else putting things out there on social media, or the town hall meetings, or some other way, or maybe it's the monthly or bi-monthly newsletter. We need to get that information out there, and the other thing that does is it gets the correct information out there, because sometimes, the people hear things and things change from one person to the next, and it's important to get the correct information out there. I think that's what we can try to do. And people have questions we might not even anticipate.
So when is your next board meeting?
2 weeks.
So
Yeah.
does that give everybody enough time to think about?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
And we have time beyond that if, it doesn't all have to be done next meeting.
Right, okay, cool.
And what Mark is mentioning is there's a lot of accuracy issues that are done on social media that you have no control over.
Correct.
And sometimes there are people that think they know what's going on and they're putting out what they consider accurate information, but it's the farthest thing from the truth. And it's been a difficult issue for the board to figure out how to address that, even after having multiple meetings on the same topic. Sometimes you just can't, and I guess it's probably the issue of people willing to understand or opening their minds up to listening to different options that are out there.
But maybe there, in the newsletter, if we know there's a particular issue out there, that if we can sort of come to an agreement that, here's our response to what's being thrown around out there. Like recently, there was, something going around that the town is about to seize someone's property, by eminent domain, and, it was just,
How'd that work out?
it was news to a lot of people.
There was a lot of time being put away.
But the point is, though, that when that stuff comes up, maybe if we're doing the newsletters on a quarterly basis, doing the town hall meetings, we can actually physically address because a lot of times when you get into it on Facebook, it can go in a bad direction, go sideways pretty quick. So that, it's a better way maybe of addressing issues that come up and putting them to bed once and for all, especially if we got the board sort of in agreement,
Well, I was gonna say, one of the things early on is if you're gonna send the information out, the board sees it first.
Right.
And then it goes out. There's no, 3 people thought this, 2 people thought that, everybody saw it, had a little feedback, and then it goes. So we can work on how that mechanism can work, but, you don't want information to go out and then the individual board members, well, that's not right, or I didn't know that, or so.
Well,
You're on
again,
the same page.
the newsletter idea might be a way to, when an issue pops up,
Right.
to address it. And before the newsletter goes out, it goes among all 5 board members to review, to make sure they're in agreement. And if they have issues, they get into conversation. But again, it's a way to maybe nip things in the bud before they take on a life of their own.
So the next 4 really we talked about, and I guess we'll talk about it later in the agenda, work as a team, build relationships, speak with one voice, listen, respect opinions, challenge the options. That's about interpersonal relationships on the board. We talked about it on the later agenda. We can just skip past that. Meet with other boards more than just at budget time. Somebody put that down. So I don't know what the process is, or I assume you have everybody in over the budget.
In the past, I've been on boards where we invited department heads in on a quarterly basis and just asked them for a quick update on, what's going on in your department, that sort of thing.
Department head or board
Well, department heads and board,
Okay.
and board chairs, and just say, you know, bring us up to speed on things. We also, in fact, I think we did it with the last board, and it never actually worked out. We sort of divided up the boards and departments as liaisons. And, you know, we said, why don't, you know, periodically we report back on what's going on with the boards and committees and departments that we were assigned. And it ended up not going anywhere. We just, you know, we went through the process, but we never really followed up and brought it in. So that's something else I think that we could discuss again as a possibility is, and then during our selectmen's notes would be a good opportunity to maybe update on anything going on with the specific boards or department heads that you're associated with.
So I'm gonna put that right back up in the communication. When you come up with communication, because that's really what that is. So, I mean, if you're developing a plan or policy, that, if the board agrees, that would be part of the communication plan that you folks develop. And the next one, board should be more active in developing goals, I guess, what we do, or boards, I should say, it wasn't just board, it was a mixed one. So I don't know how other boards work. A lot of statutory, so they have to, planning board of the conservation, so you have to do what the law says. So it's tough to set goals, unless you have a master plan, or open space plan, or a housing plan. You know, obviously, certain people have responsibility for those, so that's what.
With that being said, I've been to numerous boards, committee meetings and whatnot, and how things are presented in their meeting minutes, it's lacking to some extent.
In description?
In description, but also when they get posted, if they're even posted online with the town website, or that just doesn't get done because of some of the smaller ones. And
Then they don't meet for a month and.
Right, and same with like executive session meetings don't get done on a periodic basis that they should be done. They
So
go
executive
long periods of
session
time.
should be done, it's a question when you vote to release them. So usually they don't get released until after the matter that was, the executive session has been resolved.
Right.
So, but I don't know if people, you know, you're in executive session and a year later, you forget about the fact that you were. And so the minutes should get released even though you forgot about the issue.
Right.
So I'm trying to figure out, maybe someone can send a reminder out to.
Well, what I did with the redevelopment authority is I actually had a list.
Right.
And on that list, as the secretary, I kept track
Of
of
yeah.
all the meetings that got, when they got approved and when they got posted online, because I used to post them all myself. And executive session meetings, I went back in history to find out what the other ones were that didn't get done,
Right.
to bring them forward, to get them up to snuff, and just continue that on. So I actually had a list that said, hey, we need to do this, let's review this again, and get them done and over, it's all done. So,
Right.
I don't think any other board does that, I don't know about this one, but to keep track of things like that.
And so how do people, I mean, in a way, is that an issue? Because, I mean, I know that happens in a lot of places. You know, because, like I said, a year ago in executive session, we forgot all about it. You never released the minutes.
I would say when it
That's not an
happens.
unusual issue.
Yeah, I would say it's never deliberate.
No, I
It's more
understand
just, we just didn't remember even to go back and look. So
Right.
which is why, do we have a system necessarily, Elaine, in place?
You do, but I think you're also talking about
Other
the little committees that might meet once every 6 months or once a quarter or whatever, obviously not statutory ones.
And that's a communication tool for the public to know what's going on.
Correct.
And also for us, especially if you try to research issues that happened in the past.
So why don't you put that under communication? Because maybe you can figure out how to reach out to these folks and say, hey, here's our expectations as a community about our minutes, you know, they should be timely, yada, yada, yada. So, I mean, that's really communication. So that would be a good thing to put under this umbrella and try to figure it out. Cool. Other comments before we move on? Okay, we'll go another 20, 30 minutes, take a break. Okay. This is really about the next couple, really about what does the board want to accomplish over the next year and the next 3 to 5 years. And so we'll take some time on these and see if we can flesh out what there's a consensus on to put on a future agenda, or what there isn't. And so the first one is initiate urban renewal plan and explore revenue potential. Yes, no, maybe?
Well, we have an urban renewal plan already.
Right.
It's basically up to the developer now.
So is there any action anybody could take, or is it on hold?
This board, I think, this board, there's not really much we can do.
Yeah.
You know, that the developer needs to go back to the RDA.
Right.
But really, for this board to do anything, I think we're pretty much done with it now.
So, unless we do a pilot agreement with
Right.
them for taxes or something like that, I mean, that would be.
Yeah, I think we've been, I know I have been, I bring it up periodically at meetings, like, what is going on? When's it going to happen? Because it's been almost 2 years now since it started. And I know initially we hoped that we'd be having entertaining offers by this point, but the state process took longer than we expected, and it just got dragged out.
Yeah, good.
So that,
Okay.
you know, we're still hopeful, but, you know, at the same time, it's also going to be the right project, too.
So really, there's no specific action at this point?
That's something we're hopeful for, but it doesn't really,
But the board
we don't,
doesn't have to take it?
no,
Okay.
I don't think so.
That's fine. Update the open space plan, is it running out?
Well, the current one's dated 2010 to 2015.
Yeah, I'd say that's a little loose. So is this open space and recreation? So they made them 7 years, but they're still 2 years behind.
Is that under our purview? Isn't that,
Well, you'd have to,
No, but it's encouraging them to do that.
mhm.
It's a huge undertaking.
Where does the responsibility lie?
Well, it's technically it's a subsection of the master plan, but typically the Conservation Commission does that.
Mhm.
The last time we did it, the rec committee was not as very much involved because actually the membership wasn't really like it is today. So that would be.
and is this something that you need some financial support because the staff doesn't have the time with outside consultant, or would they
I don't know.
do it in? Well, I mean, I
The
think,
staff's part-time.
obviously, you can't get grants if you don't have an open space and recreation.
You can't implement your plan.
You can't, right.
If it's not up to date.
So
And you
the
get
question
state
is,
funding.
do you have internal capacity to do this? Or do you need external capacity or a combination thereof if you're going to update it? Because, you know, if you have an old one, at least you have a baseline of some information. Clearly, you might not have as much open space anymore. You might, you know, things have changed since 2010. 2015 is when it expired.
Is it worth asking Conservation Chair to come in for a meeting?
You know, we should make sure Concom's planning, thinking of doing this, and then they should come to us if they're gonna say, look, we're gonna need some money to go ahead and hire a consultant or something for it, and, you know, that
Well,
would
you
be
can get the
fine.
regional, I don't know if the regional plan.
Serpent, yes, Serpent always helps us with that. The problem is that last time we did it, I was the full-time conservation agent, and I just know it takes a lot of time.
Right.
There are always certain sections that stay the same. I mean, Carver's geology
Doesn't change,
changed,
right.
you know. Our history really hasn't changed all that. But there are certain sections that they require the update. And of course, then you have to do a survey, and it has to be a representative sample survey. So that takes a huge amount of time.
Can we send an inquiry into,
Before you get started here, is that we need to go to planning board first, because it's part of the master planning process, so we have to start with them. I think in the past, they may have delegated some of that authority to the Conservation Commission. We've got to start with the planning board. And I think one of the challenges that the town had with the last master plan process was that there wasn't a huge turnout. You know, I mean, all towns are facing this. And I think, you know, again, it needs to be something that's jointly discussed with the planning board as to, you know, because that's where the planning efforts take place in the town, as to what the next steps are.
well, I think what we need to do is to find out, is anybody thinking about it, and can we get, are they planning on moving forward with it?
So
So,
maybe if you can invite the planning board, the conservation, and remember to rec to it, selectmen's meeting.
yeah, that's what I was thinking would be a
And
good
start
idea.
the process, and then say, hey, we need to update this, what's the best way to accomplish that? And whether we do it in-house, or you come to Serpent, and you gotta pay them $50,000 or whatever, you know. So you're gonna put that on the?
Yep, we'll add that, we'll put that in the future
open
agenda.
Space, okay. And when you say future agenda, is this in the next 90 days?
Yeah, probably.
Or 30 days? I mean, obviously you have some.
Basically, we take a look at the agenda and see how full it is, and then, you know, if there's room, we put it in, and
So that's-
otherwise.
So the first goal is communication, the second is the open space discussion.
Mhm.
Is that plan, open space?
Yeah, with like A, B, C, D, E, and F under communication.
Right, I got that. Okay. Continue the town's fiscal policies?
The next three are kind of all looped together and dependent upon each other.
Okay, well, except that I saw on the agenda you have an agenda item for fiscal management policies. Is that the same thing? Continue the fiscal policies?
Yeah, they tie in.
Right, and so, but the other ones are staffing for the clerk and land use departments.
But then you get into that costs money. So, you know, you're balancing
Right, but.
the budget with what our fiscal policies are, with what the school needs, with what the union contracts
Oh, I'm
have.
not arguing
I mean,
about
it's,
that. I'm saying that, do you have these discussions at the beginning of the budget process, or, I mean, how does the board set priorities? I mean, if the Board of Selectmen priority was to add 3 hours to the clerk's office, that would end up in the budget, right? If that was if it wasn't, it wouldn't, correct? I mean, and then you get the FinCom, obviously, town meeting, and you have fiscal policies, so you have all these, you know, balls in the air and trying to juggle them, so.
Well, practically speaking, we've already had our town meeting, so
Yeah,
the
well, right, that's.
staffing for the clerk's office would have to be a subject for next year.
If the board wanted to talk about it, what's the appropriate time? If the board doesn't want to talk about it, that's up to you. I don't know the issues.
I think some of these, you know, right now, we have a new town clerk who's just elected.
Yep.
That individual is, you know, evaluating his staffing commitment.
You
We don't know what the clerk is.
You got a lot, you gotta get certification.
Certification's got to go through a bunch of stuff, and they've got to figure that out as to what they need, and we're obviously supporting them through that effort. So just to throw that out there without having any documentation of
No,
what
yeah,
they are,
right.
we need to have that. And they need some time to get up on that, so it's not a quick 30, 60, 90-day type of thing.
No, I-
When we do our budget policies and processes, that normally takes place in the fall,
Right,
when we evaluate what the revenue of the town's going to be.
correct.
And, you know, right now, like most towns, we live under paygo. And, you know, the last time the priority of the board was to hire a school resource officer. Some positions got cut in half because of that. But that was the priority.
Right.
And, you know, there's only so much funding, and that's when the board has the ability to go through that in the fall. And more importantly, as we get into the winter, once proposed budgets come from the department heads as to what they need to maintain services, then that gives the Board of Selectmen the ability of looking at other alternatives.
So, did anybody that wanted to talk about staffing, the appropriate time is when you start the budget process? And that's October or whatever.
September, October,
Yeah, I
sometime in
know,
there.
yeah, right.
We have a 4-step process that lays out those 4 phases that are in there.
Right.
And it's in those phases, that one of those phases is purely under the Board of Selectmen.
Right.
And that's the time.
So would you just put these on hold, and then if someone brings them up during that process, you put them on the agenda? I mean, I don't know what
Yeah, I wouldn't see us taking these up before the end of the summer.
well, I don't think there was any expectation
Yeah.
that any of this gets resolved in the next 6 weeks, that, you know, you're setting goals for a year. I mean, if the open space plan moves forward and you have I don't know if you have a fall special town meeting and you need $8,000, maybe you put on the fall town meeting. I don't know what your finances are, but as long as if there's agreed upon process, then we should try to accomplish that. So that,
I'm unclear as to what properly fund land use departments means.
planning, conservation, Sarah, any comment?
Well, you know, most of the department heads in the land use departments are part-time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they need to be more than part-time.
Oh, okay. I wasn't clear as to, I thought there was some other issue. Okay.
Yeah, part has a lot to, land use is a big deal in Carver. And I think we're gonna pay for it down the road by not having these department heads have more time to do their work.
I actually agree with that. between all of the wetlands we have along our town. And
It's a
then
big town, too.
Right, and there's issues between residents that have problems and that need to get solutions, and when they can't meet with people within the town because they're not around, it's kind of a challenge for them. So, and that's part of our job, is to help people out.
So is it fair then, does the board say, we'll bring this up in October?
Well, I mean, that would be the appropriate time to talk about it,
So
but,
it'll be on a selectmen's agenda in October, if that's one of your goals?
and you just have to keep in mind that,
And
I
maybe
mean-
you say yes, no, that-
but no, I understand, but I mean, in the fiscal austerity that we've gone through, we've got a part-time COA director, a part-time library director, a part-time conservation agent, part-time Board of Health agent, a part-time building commissioner, and that was all done because we had financial restrictions. We've got a school department that is, that is desperately in need of money, and if we add all those people back that I just mentioned to full-time, where are the cuts coming from? Someone's losing a job somewhere.
that's a good discussion.
Right.
And, that's why you have the board, that's why you have finance committee and town meeting. So, I mean, ultimately, what are the priorities of the town?
Mhm.
Is it public safety, is it education, is it land use, is it, whatever it is? I mean, that's one of the key roles of the board, because the budget is really a statement of values and what is important in your community. So, I mean, if you just say, hey, we'll have this discussion in the fall, as you, in the bigger context.
As we enter the budget process, yeah.
Right?
I think there are lots of departments in town that certainly deserve more funding, but we have residents who have tax issues as well, and I think that is a balancing act that we need to pay close attention to.
Everybody, except for the real rich places, everybody's having the same debate, okay? I can tell you, where I work, we finally have one more police officer than we had 20 years ago. Okay, 20 years of cuts, So when everybody, unless you're a town that has an override every 2 years, we're all in the same boat. I wish there was an answer. But that's why you're elected. So, construct a police station? I don't know.
Well, we just had a town meeting vote where town meeting voted to move forward with the construction of a police station. So I think what's left is just whatever
Get it
residual
done.
responsibility might have to come back to us, but for the most part, town meeting's authorized and move forward.
Okay, so that's just,
Groundbreaking in August.
so that's just going along, that's just like, okay, dealing with the trash crisis, good luck. You getting whacked with recycling?
Well, our 30-year deal with the landfill is ending
Oh, okay.
in 2020.
What's your tip rate?
Um,
Just curious. 0?
Yeah.
That's a pretty good rate.
Doesn't get much better, does it?
Yeah.
What's your rate now?
70, plus or minus.
So we've worked hard to put people on notice that changes are coming. In fact, we had a non-binding article to see if the town wanted us to go out and get a single-payer option. Because right now, we've got 8, 9 trash haulers in town, 5 trash haulers in town, and everyone has their own deal.
Has their own deal.
Everyone has their own deal, and so that we threw it out there to town meeting. Would you like us to at least procure
Or investigate it.
or investigate a one-payer? And they came back and said no.
Okay.
They just want to run with the system we have, so that I still personally don't see what the harm is in finding out what the difference
So
would
do
be.
you- but all.
We may hear about it if everyone's suddenly jumping from 200, 400 a year, or whatever it is.
Once it happens, that they.
So
Yeah.
does even though we have individual, I'm just curious, everybody has individual hauls, but they're all committed to go to the same disposal site?
Yeah, but yes, well, they've been getting the advantage of a reduced rate for Carver trash as well.
Okay.
So Carver residents could go to the transfer station after paying for the sticker, dump sticker, which was $20 for years, and that's it for the whole year.
Right.
Or you could hire somebody that might charge you, what, $15, $16 a week or something? It depends, everyone had their own deal.
Okay.
I think it's $50 now.
Well, I know it's $50 now. That does include the beach, though. It does include getting to the beach. You know, so but it's, and if you had a hauler, the haulers, because they were hauling Carver trash, got a reduced rate.
Okay.
And so all of that's gonna go away
Okay.
once we get past the end of this deal,
So what
so.
is an average, just curious, what's an average citizen pay a private hauler? Best guess.
I don't know, my wife pays the bills.
Okay.
I wanna say it's maybe 200 a year,
Oh, that's probably about right.
somewhere in that
And-
ballpark?
Mine is about $200.
Do you
Yeah.
do recycling or no?
Single stream.
No, well,
Haulers have the right to offer recycling.
mine does,
I
but
think the different ones do it differently.
I just wonder if anything's getting recycled these days with what's going
Oh,
on.
yeah, I mean, yeah.
It's all COVID.
So the only thing, at this town meeting, they said eventually, I can tell you that curbside collection is $240 per year per household.
Really?
Yeah.
How big a town?
Now we have 9,500 customers.
Well,
So,
It's customers, so households.
yeah, households.
right, but 250 a year, that's in the
Well,
running
it
with
was
what we're
two-
paying
It
now.
was 210 until the recycling crisis hit, so it'll actually go up in July, but, so we were in the 200 to 220 for years and years. And we pay $70 a ton to dispose. So, yep, it's all self-supporting by fees. We got the big toters, people love it, there's no trash, there's no litter. Everybody can roll it out to the curb, but some.
But that's a single payer system? That's just, it's town-wide trash
You get,
pickup?
yeah, you get billed on your water and sewer bill.
Okay.
You don't have necessarily that, but you get a quarterly bill for
All right.
$50, $56.
We'll have to play it by ear and see what happens.
So
what
that's really
develops.
nothing, you're gonna wait,
Yeah.
that's a wait and see.
It's gonna really wait
Okay.
till they start getting socked with those bills.
Yeah,
and then we'll hear.
town meeting didn't want us to investigate it, so.
Yeah, well, it's- battery and solar projects. So we'll put that down. I see a solar project there, it's a street. So do you guys have any?
That was the first one ever done on water.
Yeah, I was gonna say, there's a lot of water.
The one on 44 was the first one done on highway.
So are people looking to do more? Or?
We have significant growth in this town meeting, just recently passed some bylaw changes, allowing some more flexibility with controls on doing so.
Like site plan or?
Right, we actually receive a lot of revenue from these solar projects. The challenge with the revenue is that it's one-time revenue that comes in for 20 years.
Right.
Because then it's built into the base, but once that goes away, then the taxpayers have to pick that up. So
Yep.
the challenge is even though you may get this revenue, is do you put it in operation base, which means you get a huge hit at the end to the taxpayers, or do you put it into one-time cost?
In fact, I think that's one of the things we'll be taking up as, to discuss in our future board meetings is,
It's in section 6.
oh, of what, the agenda?
Decide the best use of tax dollars coming from pilot and solar
Okay.
programs. That's something we're gonna have to work
So is
on.
that gonna be in the next 6 months?
Yeah, we could see that, start
We may
discussing
have to
that
discuss
early.
it beforehand, because we have
Yeah.
a bunch of solar agreements that will be coming in the next few months. That's gonna be some revenue coming to the town, and we need to make a decision where that's gonna go. So-
We gotta decide whether, like Michael says, operations, do we wanna put it towards the debt exclusion to reduce the tax burden on the residents for paying for the new elementary school? Do we wanna use it to go ahead and start paying down more the OPEB liability, which sooner or later is gonna come ahead and bite us? So there are lots of things.
Or anything else you decide.
Right, so I mean, there's a lot to think about, it's not
Is it gonna be on the
just.
agenda? in
Oh, yeah,
2
yeah,
months?
that's-
Probably, yeah.
I would say
think
probably
so.
over the summer we'd be getting.
Yeah, I'd say the next month or two.
So.
It's tough, because, I mean, what at that time, the poor Board of Selectmen in 20 years is gonna have to deal with some big financial holes, so it's a question
Just
of,
some background, Alan Jermaine is our chairman of the finance committee in the back there with the bright yellow shirts. Listen, one of the generations.
He wants to be seen.
He doesn't need to be seen, look at hero. But seriously, is that many of the departments, starting from the school, they've negotiated a contract that they have identified. The first year they can find, the second year is going to be tough, and the third year they're going to have to lay off teachers.
Right.
We also have additional needs for our public safety, particularly the police in the town. And there may be some needs for additional town hall staff. We have quality people at this time, but, you know, when they retire, we're not going to be able to get somebody that can do their work on a half-time basis. The point being is the town has many, many, many conflicting needs for additional revenue. That's all towns have. And the question is going to be is, what are our options going forward? This is what the Finance Committee is going to be having, is setting up a, you know, an analysis of what the impacts are, what the projections are right now, of where we're going to continue to run the deficit. Even though we do a 10-year plan, it shows, you know, not good days are coming.
Right.
And what are our options for changing that? You know, how do we deal with this one-time revenue? How do we deal with other revenue sources? What can we grow other revenue sources? You have down here, explore revenue potential in the first bullet.
Right.
You know, these are all things that that need to be evaluated.
So-
And again, the Finance Committee, I know, is taking a strong lead in this right after, starting next week.
So when do you think there'll be a discussion with the
Clearly
finance
over the
committee?
summer.
So do I put August?
I mean, what do you think, Alan?
September.
September, that would be.
We're gonna roll right into probably budgets right after
Because
that.
ultimately, I mean, you're gonna look at it, then you have a discussion with the selectmen, are gonna, so it's gonna be kind of a.
We try not to tell the selectmen anything.
Yeah, well, okay.
I mean, one of the things, you know, we figure we know we have to work on a plan
Right.
because the urban renewal project is out there.
Right.
It could come in and provide a lot of relief. Maybe nothing ever comes of it. We can't count on the idea that something comes of that.
Yeah, 'cause
It'd
if
be
the
great.
economy crashes, that may sit up there for a while.
If it'd be great if it did, and that'll be a pleasant dilemma if suddenly we've got an extra $2 million flowing into the town from whoever goes in up there. But I think we need to deal with the
What we have
expectation
now.
that, with what we have now, exactly.
And you also have to remember that the cranberry industry is in a very severe
Nosedive.
slump.
I know, yeah, agreed.
And that's not coming back
And
soon.
it may not come back, so, and cranberry growers, although they have a lot of wetlands on their properties, they have a lot of really unprotected uplands. And
Okay.
chapter 61 isn't permanent
Right,
protection.
right.
And so, I don't know about you guys, but one of my hopes is that instead of new single-family homes, we see some solar
Right.
on their.
That's,
Yeah,
a lot of the cranberry growers have turned to solar to keep their heads above water.
great.
And that
So they
is,
can still have their farm, and they can pay their taxes. and
Right.
Their heads are above water.
and the solar farms don't require any
Correct.
education for their
So they
children.
already built one school.
Yeah.
Just
So,
recently.
so I guess
Gonna need
this whole solar discussion is gonna be August, September, FinCom, Board of Selectmen.
Yep.
Ultimately, you come up with a policy, hopefully that everybody's agreed upon, so I'm just gonna put September. Okay. We already talked about communication, we already talked diversity. Is there anything in the next year that didn't get included on this list that anybody else wanted to talk about?
Well, the diversity on boards and committees for this one,
Right, to vote.
I know this one is really dear to me because you see the same people on boards and board and board and board and board over and over and over again. And other people may want to get involved, but because either it's full or the same people, you see the name after name after name. And how effective can one person be if you have that, you say diversity on us? I mean, we need diversity on all the boards and committees.
And do you have enough volunteers?
So historically, recently, we have not. You know, we just finally got the Finance Committee, which was operating around 5, 6 people for the last 2 years. Now we were able to add 5 people to it, so we have there finally 11. I think diversity of people's beliefs, we score A+ on that, because, you know, looking at the town from, we had Governance Committee 1 and 2, that had 5 people that never got along with one another ever in their life. You know, a liberal, a conservative, you know, Democrat, Republican, whatever it was. And they were able to make some strategic moves at town meeting for some difficult discussions that were there. We took a school building that had failed 3 times, and we had a diverse committee on that. Again, I'm talking diverse people of attitudes. Now, the problem is you don't have enough people. You don't have enough people that want to get involved. So that's really more of the challenge, is getting people rather than diversity of opinions. Because the committees that you have the ability of kind of putting together is you try to recruit people to fill voids in certain aspect of the community, so you can have that free-flowing dialogue where it's not always just a one-sided committee.
Right.
And we don't have the volunteers, just like all these other towns are.
Yeah, you're not unique. I guess you could add that to your communications, if you were interested. How do we do a little more outreach? But you're right.
Well, I'd like to see us
It's
continue
really
because
hard. We're lucky to get a volunteer to fill a vacancy. I mean, it just, people are not invested. I think.
well, it's starting to get better though, I think. At least from and I think the finance committee is a good representation of that. For years and years, if we ever had more than 6 people on it, and now we're up finally to the full 11th. And I think as people see that, hopefully more and more people will be coming in and applying for things so we can get a lot of these boards and commissions up to full staff.
I think with the
But it's
finance
something we
committee,
we have to keep encouraging.
we have a huge difficulty getting people with children involved, and of that age.
Why?
And we were fortunate to have three people on the finance committee that have volunteered to get involved because they have school kids in there. Now, one of the big tasks for them to look at is the school budget, so it makes sense. But again, now you get diversity. You get 3 people that have kids in the young kids. You got 3 people that are on fixed income that don't want to spend any money. And then you got the other 5 that are in between all that. And so
We have an assistant superintendent.
there you go.
So, my only thought is whether you want to make that part of your communications goal or plan to do more outreach.
So one of my, I have suggestions of the law here, but one of the list of boards, committees, commissions, and appointees, the dates of their expiration, and it's updated every year to say, hey, and this is posted so everyone can see who's on a board and committee, and not have to flip through each individual computer when you're going online to look at it. Well, I got a key to see this one, clear to see this one, and it's
You want it in one spot.
They're not always updated.
Yeah, so you want one-stop shopping.
One shop shopping. You go to the town
List of
hall.
all committees and boards.
And
With
just
terms.
right, and list them
That's
all out so
easy.
people can see them and see, all right.
So why don't you put that under communication and then bring that up?
It's here.
That's going to be very difficult because people are added, well, I would say added that often. They more recently have been added often and resign. It is constantly changing. And we do have a difficult time keeping up on each committee and board listing alone, never mind all one together, which would be another
We'll give it to the
set.
clerk.
But, well, we did have one on the website and it actually didn't work well. It was all online, but even now, like each committee board is supposed to update their own listing on the website, and that's not happening. It's just hard for either the clerk's office or our office to take on that responsibility for all these changes. And a lot of times, people will resign from a board and not
They'll
notify
tell you,
us.
right?
So sometimes our listing.
Did-
So can I make 2 points on?
Well, Elaine, just one question. Wasn't there something coming up where we're coming to the end of our contract with the current website? And, 'cause isn't there sort of a website glitch? And,
That's all fine.
well, no, but I mean, there was a website glitch, and I thought the town clerk told you we had to wait to a certain point in time before we could address it.
No, we addressed it right away.
That was a software issue.
I think you're
that was all.
combining 2 things
Yeah.
that we talked about. We talked about the listing of the first 3 items, and then you have.
Oh,
one
right,
more.
right, okay.
We can get that changed without a fee if we wait till the end of the contract.
That's what I was thinking of, okay.
So we do a review of what we want to
Okay,
change.
sorry, I confused that.
So 2 things what Elaine said, and I'm going to bring up because these are really important, is that, it's nice to want all of these things, but we live in confined financial situations and staffing time. So, as Elaine mentioned, doing all of this and committing the staff time to do that when, all these offices are generally funded or supported by part-time people.
Right.
And that's where you run into problems. We may want everything, and if we're Newton or Wellesley, we can have 5 people working on social media to push communication out because they've got the hundreds of millions to do that. So to expect that Carver's going to be at the same level of them, it just isn't rational because we don't have the money for it. We don't have the staffing for it, we don't have the support for that. That's one of the balances that we have to make in wanting things. And, Bob, you may not be aware of this, yet the Board of Selectmen receives a monthly update, and March started that about a year ago, as to who's applied for committees and what vacancies are there. So, that does come out every month for the Board of Selectmen.
That we're
you know, so-
notified of.
And if anyone's applied but not been appointed.
That's right, that's all there too. So they have access to that information, again, on a monthly basis.
I do think, though, as we go forward with these different types of communications avenues, that gives us another opportunity to maybe each month highlight a particular board that has vacancies or something. And there are lots of people out in the community that have different skill sets, and they may not be aware there's an opening. So as we communicate with different...
Is it fair to say that most places, all your appointments are in the spring of July?
Yeah, we do all the
I
final
mean,
appointments in
what?
June.
Yeah, right, okay. So, I mean, at that point, you must have a master list at least of what's vacant and what's not.
Yeah, because the selectmen do get a list once a year.
We always keep a current list of what's vacant. That's
Okay.
always on the website, but I think
Okay.
what you're talking about is a listing of who is on current committees and boards. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those are two different things. We have that right now. And anytime a vacancy changes, we immediately update that on the website and outside of our office.
I would think, though, that this is, I mean, I understand we got to find a way to try to do this with as minimum a burden as possible, but it doesn't seem unreasonable that I can go out to the town website and find out who's on boards and what their terms are, especially, I mean, for instance, let's say it's a conservation
Well,
issue.
no, it's all
and I-
listed on there right now. I mean, it's all available today. I think what Bob was saying, instead of me going to each board and looking at it, he wants a master list so he can just look at everybody. And our website isn't programmed that way. So that would be an issue of how
Right.
we consolidate all those pages into one.
But, I mean, maybe there's another way to do it, so that,
I would just put it on your list.
So we could discuss it at our next communications meeting.
No.
And it's worthy of discussion.
we're going to have an extra meeting just for the communications.
Right.
That's okay.
Or two.
Do you ever do workshops? How often do you meet?
Just like twice a month.
Separately, but they're all being
Sometimes done once.
Okay. Anybody else on anything in the near future, next year? If not, we'll take a 5-minute break.
I move for the 5-minute break.
Okay. Just a stretch. Good stuff.
That's where it's going, Bob.
Yeah, the solar revenue issue. Is that a fair synopsis today? Okay. 3 to 5 year issues. Obviously, you know, if anybody's been on the board, 3 years goes by like that. So having a little long-term vision certainly is a good thing. Town hall complex, town center vision. Is it? Not sure what that's all about.
I mean, I'm not sure that's a 3 to 5 year, because stuff's already under construction, you know, after town meeting voted for this year. So a lot of the town hall complex stuff is all gonna, at least the first major phase of that is gonna be done in 2019.
Okay, and center of town vision, I don't know, that was part of it. Is that something beyond that? Is that in a master plan, is that?
It's all part of the plan that was voted on the town meeting to fund certain elements of it.
Most people have issues. New playground gets built?
That's been cleared and
That's been
it's on
funded.
its way funded.
Okay.
Yep, meeting
Hopefully very
next
soon.
Wednesday to-
Okay, so that's moving down the track.
Those are all implementation
Okay,
projects.
working with state to find, for more funding for schools.
That's a 3 to 50 year project.
That's a never.
Yeah, but
That's constantly going on.
But that's something we need to actually, I think, have a physical presence with our legislators on.
I think so.
You can invite them in, or do they come in? and-
It's, we had.
We did that once.
We had them in a while ago. I know Senator Pacheco just had
Do you invite them in?
a session, I think it was it one of our town meeting nights or something? And so that we couldn't attend. But, no, we have to stay front and center with that. We have some of the elements that get us our special ed funding.
So do you want to invite them in on an annual basis?
Why not have them in?
Yeah.
Update us on what we've done.
I mean, tomorrow night, Franklin, the Senate President, is coming to our meeting. She happens to be our senator. So we do that every year. We invite
Yeah.
them in the spring when they're doing the budget debate with the House and the Senate. Put our 2 cents, and whether it works or not, at least you try it.
Hopefully he won't tell us again that if we don't have at least 2,000 in our school system, there's no way you can survive. That's what he told us the last time.
So you want to
But it is true.
Senator Rep to...
Well, it's the rule of thumb, but I don't, we got to get creative and find a way to make it work.
So that's not, so if you invite the senator reps to the board meeting, you can do that in the next 3 months. You don't have to wait 5
Right.
years, all right?
Well, that should actually take place back in January.
Right. But I mean, you want to,
No, I think nobody's we can't have them in the
it's
fall.
up to you guys.
No, I'm just saying, when they're dealing with budget and debate and stuff like that, that's it.
But I'd like to get an update as to what's going on now, what they anticipate is going to happen, which might lead us to where we should be engaging.
So you want to, I'll just put fall and you can
Yeah.
figure it out. Okay. Continue to search revenues. I mean, other than it's a never-ending search, is there anybody have a specific idea? I mean, that's what we do all day, every day in my business.
I mean,
I mean, unless...
The solar, the batteries.
You get the batteries, you got the...
Urban renewal project.
but Beyond that, I'm sure you've looked at fees, I'm sure you've looked at...
We periodically look at regionalization
Yeah.
at some level that when we can.
and we've
do
had
it.
some success there
Okay.
with the
So that's not
regionalization.
really a revenue, that's a...
Well,
that's a
it's
savings.
revenue in the sense that if you save money here, you've opened up some additional revenue.
Does anybody have any, in the next 3 years, have anything specific they want to target, or just back of the head thing?
Well, I think the urban renewal plan, that should be front and center. I know the developer has got to put a packet together to put brochure out there, I should say, to do it. But what more we can do physically in our capacity here is kind of limited.
Absolutely.
For what that, I mean, but the options for that property are really unlimited to an extent. So,
Just limited by zoning.
yeah,
It's only limited by what is allowed by zoning.
Which you already created.
right.
Planning board.
Yeah, but it's already in place.
But, even then,
You can change it if it was something that everybody
Yeah.
loved. Go to town meeting, hold a special town meeting. and-
like, I don't know if it could be a golf course right now, but,
Right, okay.
Right now,
I
through
like that
permitting,
idea.
it's fully permitted through MEPA as well, just complete that piece. So for what its intended use is, it's fully
Ready to
permitted.
rock and roll.
Correct.
Other than site
Could the
plan.
market change and you have to change the underlying zoning to adjust for that? That's probably the area where you need to pay attention to. Other than that, it's privately owned.
Okay.
but that means going to a town meeting if you have to change zoning.
But anyway, okay, so, work with business community to enhance economic development within the character of the community. Is that, do you have a business community? Is there a connection, or is it?
I think that's something we really need to have a discussion about, because I don't know how much we've actually done to involve the business community in getting their ideas of how to take the town forward from a business point of view.
Okay, so, what would you?
But, that's probably
Is there a
depending on
contact
timing.
point?
So the planning department used, I'm sorry, the planning department used to do that. They'd have a business roundtable one morning a month or something. I don't know if they still do that.
We used to have the industrial development committee, we had the business development committee, where they're at now. I have no
Do you still
clue.
have that committee?
I don't think they've
A lot
been.
of them.
So is it something the Board of Selectmen could hold a meeting once just to reach out to the community? The business
I think
community?
it's not probably in the next few months, but
Oh, but if you did
I think, especially if this is
November
on
or
3 to
whatever.
5 years, I think within the next year, we should reach out to the business community, try to set one up.
I think, in my opinion, from talking to business owners around town, is a lot of the frustration that they do have is on the signage bylaws, the way our signage bylaws are. They kind of have a sour taste in their mouth because they can only have this smaller sign, because they're on a smaller scale and
And
a
if
bigger
they wanted-
development,
Have they
and
gone to the planning board to talk about those kind of things?
they're really limited the way the bylaws are set up,
So, I mean, would you have a business roundtable within a year?
Good.
Yeah.
I don't see why not.
Yeah.
There's also no reason why they can't try to come up and work with the planning board to try to come up
You
with
could invite members
a
of the
compromise on the
planning
signage.
Right.
Because if it's a bigger problem for them, then we ought to be able to do something to help them.
One of our ongoing issues has been, when we do surveys, is people want to maintain the rustic rural atmosphere of the town
Absolutely.
versus taking on a more industrialized look depending on the signs, and so trying to find that magic balance between the two is part of the issue. The other thing we have here, because of the way where, so much of the burden is falling on the taxpayer, and as the state has not contributed as much towards the schools as they were, more of that burden goes on the taxpayer. So we have a fairly developed split tax rate, which is not business-friendly per se. A lot of businesses, when they come before us, we ask them about it, and they don't indicate it's a major impediment to coming in, but they're smaller businesses, and it's, I suppose...
You don't have a $3 million assessment.
Yeah, right, exactly, but I think that's been a bit of a damper on business possibly over the years as well.
I think if you had a roundtable, invited everybody and get the planning board and listen, set up an agenda, and there's no downside. You can maybe I will say the sign issue is pretty universal in a lot of places, about the debate. So you're not unique in that from places I've been. I do hear from folks that in today's world, everybody just goes on their phone and says, oh yeah, there it is. But I don't do that. I'm still old school, so yeah, I think that would be a great idea, having that, and that could be one of the issues.
Right now, Jeff, we're doing a townwide survey to everybody 55 and older, because there's, everybody has an opinion, the expert of what the seniors want, so the town's going forward, and we're actually interviewing every senior in town, and we're trying to get a high success rate of the survey. But that's kind of the focus right now, trying to understand what that population needs. And what I would suggest is that we mirror that same process for the business community at the appropriate time. That's going to take some time and some staff bandwidth. That should be something we should look at in the future, is to do that and find out exactly what's needed from all the business owners.
That's great. So I just put 1 year, and you can confirm departments efficiently organized, staffed, and equipped. I guess that would come under your previous discussion about budgets in the fall. This is a critical issue right now. I mean, that's a never-ending process. But I hear you struggle.
And you have 5 competing departments with the same issue, and it is what it is. Which one gets it or not?
Affordable housing.
That's a constant battle in this town. It's coming up with, affordable housing, because most of us, our kids have grown up here.
Talk about the legal definition?
So we don't.
Yeah, legal definition.
We don't meet the legal definition. We don't have sewer in town.
Oh, so you don't get a lot of applicants?
We don't get a lot of applicants. We've had a couple small projects. We have a very small portion of the town water. So,
You can't have 50 apartments without, okay.
That's correct. So we have very few apartments in the community. However, we have, multiple elderly villages or senior villages that...
Condos?
Other manufactured homes that are in there, and some of them are very well maintained and upkept. But, we've got a couple thousand people living in them. So affordability depends upon what the age is, because we don't have rental apartments in town for young people, but we have 55 and older, lots of those that move all the time. So again, this goes back to the survey, trying to figure out what some of the needs are.
Yeah, basically, once they graduate from college and ready to go out on their own, then they have to pretty much move out of town, unfortunately, if they want to stay in until they hit 55 and can then get into the same, the housing.
When you talk about affordable housing, are you talking about not just seniors, it's all ages?
No, it's all ages.
I think all ages.
I mean, affordable housing, it encompasses so much, not just senior citizens, but the young people just coming out of school or college, all right? It's the single parents that want a place for their kids to live, but they can't afford it because there's no options here in town, all right? You're either on the high end or a medium end. There's really no low end here in our town. But through this affordable housing, there are properties that the town does have that could be converted to affordable housing. There's also the opportunity of changing some of our bylaws to allow for more accessory dwelling units attached that could be used for rentals, but right now it's only limited to, quote, seniors, 55 or older, which I don't even meet that. But
you will.
Did he just insult the rest of the board?
Yeah, he did.
Needless to say, we as selectmen, I think we can help drive some of this options that are out there through changes in bylaws, making the process a little easier than going through.
Zoning bylaws.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or at least encourage the discussion.
Sure.
So one thing that's out there now that I know we did when I was on planning board is we realized there were a few people like living in apartments over stores, and it wasn't exactly legal. So we made it legal. We're like, hey, let's make them legal. And let's make this be a place for young people when they come out of college or single parents. The problem is, that's been on the books now since before 2008, and nobody does anything. You know, you can't make the landlords of the buildings turn them into apartments. They're allowed to now. I mean, I don't know how to get that one done.
Was it affordable housing at all in your master plan?
Yes, it's addressed in the master.
But it just a bullet point somewhere.
Yes,
Pretty much,
we need
yes.
it, we need it.
Right.
Right. Hey, stuff in the master plan, what I've seen is that it's there, but only a few things are actually put into place to make the changes that actually say the master plan says we should do.
Okay.
So it's the implementation part, it's great that we have it, but then it's the implementation of it
Yeah.
falls through the cracks. So,
It's a struggle. We do have a lot of 40Bs, and what they call affordable rents are ridiculous. God, it's like $1,800 a month. I go, whoa, it's not affordable if you just got out of college, or, I mean.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Or a
staggering.
house itself. You know, in any development, they have to have at least one, depending on the size, affordable house. Well, that's $290,000. I'm sorry, to a kid right out of school, that ain't affordable.
Exactly affordable.
So I guess the question is, there something the board would like to do, and again, these are long-term goals, in the next year, in the next couple years? What's the sense of the board?
I think we're loading up our first year. First year pretty good anyway, but to me, that'd be something like years 2 or 3 to really start attacking it hard.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about that, I remember I grew up in Weymouth, and Weymouth back in the 70s and 60s went through a giant apartment boom.
Yeah.
And it was great, except you started having families move into the apartments, and they suddenly ended up in an education problem because you didn't have the taxes coming in to fund the 2 or 3 kids that were in an apartment, because they weren't generating the income. So it's all a balancing act in terms of, when you bring in affordable housing, if it's not going to generate the taxes that you need to, you bring in 3 kids at $10,000 a kid, you're at $30,000, they're not paying $30,000 in taxes.
I think our average apartment, I guess, a few years old, was paying $1,400 a year.
Right. So I throw that out, not against affordable housing, but you have to be,
Oh, yeah.
everything's a balancing act.
I think if you put it on for his, second or third year, you can put it back on, do this next year on your own, so, okay.
So you did have town meeting release 2 properties from tax foreclosure that have been allocated to the selectmen, to the redevelopment authority to potentially use for affordable housing. So there's 2 things that are in the pipeline.
How big are those lots?
I don't have the information.
Do you know
right now, but they're-
how big they were, Bob?
One of them or both of them, we believe, or the committee reviewed in planning, has potential for development. It's single lots.
What's
These
your-
are Habitat for Humanity type things.
I was gonna say, what's your closest vote school?
So it's Old Colony and a very successful program.
Rochester?
They built an affordable house for us.
Yeah. We've done some with
So
Habitat for
we-
Humanity.
Yeah, it was easy. We paid for the cost of the building is what we sold the house for, like 150 grand.
Yep.
And we donated the land, they built the house, we did a lottery, and everybody came out a winner.
Yeah, I think
Or
when we
Habitat.
did the Habitat for Humanity, we left a lot on the table for it because we gave them like a reduced rate for actually the land to an extent. And then we gave them money to help build it.
Good.
And then they went ahead, built it, and they were the mortgagees, so they ended up getting the money for it, and then another money came from another bank for it. So, I mean, if the redevelopment authority was the mortgagee instead,
and then the money came back to the town for the building, so we would have got money back from that, because the amount of taxes that we take in for that, it's capped.
Right.
So we're not gonna make a whole lot of money back in taxes to recoup what we actually put in for the investment. I mean, it's gonna take 100 years in order to recoup that investment that we did, so there should be other options for that.
Is it common for a town to end up serving as a mortgagee on these things?
A redevelopment authority could.
No, the town can't.
Well, not the town, but I meant like through the redevelopment authority, whatever.
It's hard.
Yeah, a lot of times you get not-for-profits.
You get the
to do that.
not-for-profits to step up to do it, and then it's facilitated through the redevelopment authority or the board of selectmen.
Anyway, we'll put that on, I guess the consensus, you're not gonna solve that this year.
No.
Okay. The website posting, isn't that under communication?
Yes.
So you just move that up to, you're gonna have this whole generic discussion, right? Online information, that's the same thing, right? Trying to figure out how to put this in a big
I
package.
think that's all communicated.
Okay, and then standard practices for all boards, is that the minutes? Or is that?
How they conduct their meetings,
Okay.
and how everyone's formatted. I like standardization.
Right.
So everything's standardized, they can do this, they can do this, and,
Well, elected boards, they get to do what they want.
right.
Appointed boards, again, like conservation, obviously the statutory requirements, so I'm not sure. I mean, you're talking about like the way the agenda's laid out, or?
How they post the agenda, how they,
Right.
approve their minutes, get the minutes
Well, I think that's
posted.
gonna be covered under your other issue.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that is communications too.
Right. Oh, I agree.
Yeah, I think you can come up with it, right? And you can always say, ask people, like if they're appointed, hey, here's our expectations. Right, you're the appointing authority for a lot of folks. So, okay, we'll put that under communication. Are there anything
Okay,
else?
so that's a two-meeting topic now.
Well, we can always have one meeting, all you deal with is one.
Actually, we can make it a retreat.
There you go.
There you go.
Other issues that are on the agenda, and there are only two, and one is actually on your agenda, which is dealing with destructive effects of social media and the damage it does to trust and respect. I think you've already covered that, or you're gonna try to cover that, unless there's more comments. Under the, by being proactive about the information you get out there, but people have a different idea.
So we have a blogger's code of conduct, the selectmen vote every year that is supposed to describe what the expectation is of the members and how they respond to incorrect information that's out in the public, which is on the agenda later.
So that's on the agenda later, so we don't need to deal with that. And then you have the code of conduct, how can we change it to get approval from each member? And that's on the agenda, so do you want to just skip to that? Or discuss it?
No, yeah, that's gonna be part of, it's on our agenda.
Okay.
And
So-
I'll be honest, I threw that one out there. I think there's gotta be a way to phrase it and word it that we can all buy in on it. At least I wanna try.
Okay. Other issues, matters? And so that's going to be your own debate?
Yeah, under item 8.
You're going to have to facilitate.
Okay, that's fine. That's
You think we're gonna let you get out of here on that? No.
I'm here as long as you want me to. So I guess, do you want to just, is there anything else until you get to item 8? Because I think everybody has the list of things you'll put on the appropriate agendas in the coming months.
So you're saying that everything we put together there, we'll be able to grab our goals and objectives out of there?
Yeah, well, yeah, communication, open
Yep.
space, budgetary issues, solar revenue,
And I-
invite senators and reps, business community roundtable within a year, affordable housing, second and third year.
And I would hope from that we'd be able to get our
Right.
items.
Yeah, I'll talk to you before the meeting.
I would hope we'd be able to get our, our goals for the town administrator out of those also.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna put TA goals,
Yep.
and what's your timeline?
Well, we like to have them in place,
By the end of next meeting. I
well,
would hope.
not next meeting, but by the end of...
Meeting after that.
Yeah, by probably the
Yeah.
first meeting in June, so that they're in place going into the new fiscal year. Yeah.
So June, okay. And does everybody know the process?
kind of missed the process this year. The contract is supposed to be done before the election, but we did
Right, but I
this
mean,
and
you
stuff.
have a process where you sit down and work out goals?
Yes.
Okay, so that's just a board meeting or something? You put it on the agenda or I don't?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So I just put June. Okay, cool. Any other things anybody else wants to get on until we get to the next things? So I guess the first thing is financial management policy. That's really okay. I guess these are things you started 5 years ago. So.
Yep.
And does the finance committee share these as well?
Well, actually, we first came up with them,
Right.
and then we took them before town meeting to see if they would be willing to at least,
Like a
follow.
non-binding vote?
Yeah, it was non-binding.
Okay.
But they went ahead and voted to go ahead and support these financial policies, so they kind of became the town's financial policies. And then each year we review it and sign off on it again.
And then if you, for instance, come up with a solar plan, you'll amend these?
It could be in here someplace.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, these kind of cover, dealing with one-time money versus recurring money, which solar would fall under that.
Right, okay.
Now, every year, sometimes there's some wordsmithing that happens with these, but, they're substantially the same as they were as adopted in 2014.
For instance, under 3A, top of the second page, it says fund balances, stabilization, non-recurring revenue are to be only used for one-time expenditures, such as capital projects, so that it would be a change in policy if we decided to dedicate a solar project to
Something specific.
to operating budget.
Okay.
That would be breaking from the policy that we try to follow.
Okay. So, and this gets out on your web, and this is a public knowledge?
Yes.
This goes out on our web, this goes to the finance committee, it's in our town meeting packet.
Okay.
It's widely disseminated for the last 5 years. I think everyone, probably these policies are less controversial than anything else, at least recently.
I think they'll become a little more controversial as our budget gets tighter and tighter over the next couple of years, unfortunately, but
I mean, item number 7 is our split.
School,
Between the school and the town, and it is 70.3%. That's what we've been doing for a while. But, as I think Alan was saying, that becomes more challenging. Where do you lay off? Teachers or fire, policemen? That's what that boils down to.
And in fact, there was, a bit of a challenge from the schools this year that they wanted to exceed their 70.3%, which is one of the higher percentages that a town gives to a school.
So, is everything, did you have a chance to look at these? Okay, so,
I figured what we do is go through each one and then take a vote on each of them when everyone's satisfied. Does anyone want to bring up any issues relative to the financial policies?
I think right now they're fine as is, but I think we have to be prepared that maybe even later this year, we may have to look at it again.
Someone want to make a motion to approve?
I move that we approve the financial policies.
Further discussion?
I think I just have to say for the record, since I always do, that I think it might be sooner rather than later, so we might have to review the percentage that we're socking away for various things. I'm a big proponent of saving money, but I think, we're doing it at the expense of some very important issues.
But again, but you should recognize we have made some of those changes already.
Yeah. Good.
And we need to have a discussion, I agree, we have to be prepared to make those discussions as we go along.
All these people.
Right.
If there's no further discussion, those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it.
And is the agenda policy the same? If you skip them out?
That would be the last page, I guess.
Well, I'm just saying, if you get on, it might take more time. I don't know if this is what you've been doing all along.
Pretty much, yeah.
Never have any issues?
Just with, it kind of goes along with this one, but it's also the, for town meeting, for nonprofits or people who want to put in articles for town meeting. That also is an issue because it's so long. You have to put it in by December for our town meeting to go on.
I mean, the 10 taxpayers, or just anybody that
10
the board
taxpayers,
wants to
anyone,
accept to?
10 taxpayers to bring it up before us.
We set up a deadline of when articles
For the
to be,
warrant.
for the warrant coming to us, and it's outside, you know, public is like,
It was actually November 6th this year, but we didn't have town meeting till the end of April.
I mean, that's a long period of time before you get it on, and it's tough. It's
Is that
tough
in
for
here?
people. I'm not in here, I'm just bringing this up as, because it goes along with us setting our agenda.
Is that an annual vote?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Vote takes place.
we have an outline that says when things happen. So when we get to that stage, we can discuss whether we want to keep it that early or move it to another date. But we've got, clearly outlined the certain
But
dates
those are
that
the
we're
ones that
supposed to
the
hit.
selectmen accept voluntarily versus if 10 taxpayers get signatures.
Right,
The
right.
10 taxpayer signature deadline is November 6th.
Is that set by the Board of Selectmen?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
I didn't like it, but, wait,
So you're gonna bring this up in the fall.
Right, when we enter the budget process, it's all laid out, and if we want to change that date, we can.
Okay, so budget process for citizens petitions, right? So they'll just discuss it another time.
But again, that was independent of this.
No, I get that.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So how about this issue then?
Does anybody have any questions or suggested changes to the agenda policy? Someone want to make a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
There a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Loggers might be.
You're working back. Okay.
we're gonna do a lot, we're gonna
Social
do,
media? So how does this, what's,
There used to be the bloggers code of conduct, and last year the board amended to the code of conduct, they made some additional changes that are in there.
Is there anything changed this year from last year?
The naming, I think, was done, again, from bloggers to social media, so it was more inclusive.
Okay.
And Alan, I think you had some changes, were there any other changes you made?
no, not with this one. No, it's something I want to get to with the code of conduct. But with this one, this again, this really has, part of our problem is, and there's nothing we can do about it, it's the nature of the beast. Because I know Bob pointed this out when the RDA was wrestling with this. There is no consequence for not following, except the slight askance look or whatever. But I still think it's good to have a code of conduct out there. I mean, when I was in the Air Force, we had a code of conduct. Almost any job you go into, you have a code of conduct. And I think it's fine, something that we should strive for as members of the Board of Selectmen to follow this.
so, I'm reading this, and it basically says at the end, the bottom line is be respectful.
Right.
If there's disagreement or, when you cut through all these things.
Yeah, I mean, this was born out of, I think, a series of years where we had a really dysfunctional board, and it got really nasty, and it was an appeal to civility, just, again, respectful. And, in my time, I've gone through, I've mentioned it before, Speak Out, which was initially anonymous, and then you had to put your name, and then that went from Speak Out to Fix Carver, and then Fix Carver's gone to social media. And I think what everyone hopes for out of the whole thing is just respect, the ability to agree to disagree as opposed to taking it a step further and, the person that you disagree with is a bad person and, conspiring against the town. And so that's what the intent is. There is no penalty if you don't adhere to it. It's simply an effort to try to bring civility to the board that a few boards ago was really, really lacking, and that's what this was born out of. And it was the committees that came up after that that sort of developed this policy.
There may have been a few previous selectmen that were anonymously blogging about one another about issues. And as happened at that time, and this was the board's kind of opportunity to do a little self-policing, even though there's no penalty. It was just like, hey, we're all aware of what's going on, let's stop it. Let's not encourage it, and when you see incorrect information, and Alan, you cut a lot of heat for this, is when you saw incorrect information being posted on Facebook, when you try to correct it, then you were attacked. And, you know, that's part of the beast with social media nowadays.
So, the last two, I mean, if you have a policy that there's no penalty for it, it's just black and white, it's here on a piece of paper. The last two paragraphs on this, I actually wrote rude, 'cause I really think, I mean, it's kind of a rude statement to be putting it out there. We encourage everyone to ignore the trolls, so now you're calling someone a troll just because of what they're saying or whatnot. You may not like what they're saying, but it's still out there, but you're calling them a name. And then you write, never wrestle with a pig. I mean, that's another thing. I mean, these are just rude statements. If you have a policy, you put a policy out there. These statements are just not needed. I don't think they should be removed.
Want to put that in a motion?
I'll make a motion to remove the last two paragraphs.
I'll second that.
Thanks for jumping in as chair there, Alan.
I was just asking him, I didn't say to, I said, do you want to? So I knew you were tired at that end, you had a long drive today.
Thank you, yeah. Discussion?
No, I agree with Bob, I mean, I think points 1 through 4 gets it, what our goal is, what we hope to accomplish, and the last two paragraphs, I think this was really aimed back at the old, when it was more blogging, and we're talking about, fix Carver and stuff, but that's...
I mean, no, there's some rude stuff still taking place out there.
There is, but I mean, it's still not as bad as it was,
Well, again, we'll have to agree to disagree on that.
Okay, that's fine.
But I have no problem with removing it, just as long as people understand the spirit is to try not to conduct yourself as what we're trying to avoid in the last paragraphs. And actually, it's not even so much directed at us as not to engage the folks that just are trying to bait you out there. Hey, we all have families, and while a lot of us have thick skins, we're not excited to see, our families exposed to getting ripped through the,
We also don't need to be told this.
Pardon me?
We also don't need to be told those last two paragraphs, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And I think communication, I think communication, if we do a better job communicating with everyone, I think that will help.
You may still have hope. There's always one or two.
All right, if there's no further discussion, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we go on to the Board of Selectmen Code of Conduct.
Could you just
We took up the last two,
motion for those
last two paragraphs.
not
Yeah.
for the whole policy?
Correct.
Now, do we have,
It was for the whole policy.
Mr. Chairman,
No, it was just for the last two paragraphs of
so,
So then if you approve it,
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve
Oh,
the
thank Jump in anytime, Alan.
social media policy as amended.
There a second? Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. All right, good point. Now we move to the Code of Conduct for the Board of Selectmen.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that we take each numbered section individually.
Second.
For the review.
I don't think we need to vote on this. I think
Okay.
I think we
I
can
just
just
wanna
do
make
that.
sure, because, there's
All right, tell you what, I'll read it out loud and jump in if you have an objection. How's that? We'll,
those should be the moderator.
yeah. That's a miserable job, by the way. Do I need my little red, white, yellow, and green thing here? All right, number 1, a member of the Board of Selectmen in relation to his or her community should, A, realize that his or her basic function is to make policy with administration delegated to the town administrator. B, realize that he or she is, in fact, I'll read all of them and then put a hold on it if you want to come back and discuss it. We're going to just completely town meeting this. Realize that he or she is one of a team and should abide by and carry out all board decisions once they are made. C, be well informed concerning the duties of a board member on both local and state levels. D, remember that he or she represents the entire community at all times. E, accept the role of a member is a means of unselfish service, not to benefit personally or politically from his or her board activities. F, abide by the ethics guidelines established by the state and not use the position of selectman to obtain inside information on matters that may benefit someone personally.
So, Mr. Chair, I'd like to discuss B.
You were supposed to say hold when we were on B, if that's what you wanted to do.
Well, I'm saying it now.
Well, I will allow it, even though you did not follow the rules.
Gosh, thanks.
B, realize that he or she is one of a team and should abide by and carry out all board decisions once they are made. Discussion.
Yeah, in general, I don't have a problem with that, but I do feel that since we are all individuals, I don't agree with, if the board makes a decision, that we should just run out there and violate it, because we don't like it, or one of us doesn't like it. But what if you think the board made a really wrong decision? Are we supposed to then do the wrong thing, just because the board thinks what they did was right?
I think what it's trying to get at is don't run a campaign against the board once the decision's been made.
That's not what it says. It says you should abide by and carry out all board decisions.
Well, I'm not sure, I'm not clear what, abide by means you accept the decision of the board.
Carry them out. What do you
And
think?
carry out, I'm not sure what role we have in carrying out a decision anyway is.
This is very unclear.
Well, I don't think it's unclear. I guess, and carry out, I guess, is
Then
unclear.
What does it mean to you, that phrase? Because to me, it means even if the board does something that you think is wrong, you're supposed to go along with it.
Yep.
I think that's a wrong thing to ask people to do.
Okay.
You're asking people to do something that they think is wrong.
Well, and again, it gets back to what we discussed earlier, like with the eminent domain thing, where we had a board member that voted against it, but accepted the decision of the board and moved on, and did not continue to struggle and work against the decision the board made.
Well, maybe you should say that then, if that's what you're really getting at.
Maybe just the wording abide by, but maybe we strike the word carry out. We strike those three and carry out.
Would that work for you, Sarah?
It's better.
I'll make
Would
that.
you vote for it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Just take out and carry out.
Yes, and carry out.
Yeah, because, often when we vote for things, it's not left to us to actually implement it.
That's right.
All right. Did anyone else miss the opportunity to put a hold on something? There being none, does someone want to make a motion to approve 1A through F as amended?
Make that motion.
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. 2, and again, I'll read it, and please put a hold on it if you want to come back and discuss it. A member of the Board of Selectmen, in his or her relations with the town administrator, should, A, endeavor to establish sound, clearly defined policies that will direct and support the administration of, or the benefit of the staff and residents of the community. B, recognize and support the administrative chain of command and refuse to act on complaints as an individual outside the administration. C, give the town administrator full responsibility for discharging his or her disposition and solution. D, not give instructions to or request assistance from town department heads, but rather channel all such activities through the full board and the town administrator. Okay, let's go back to B, recognize and support the administrative chain of command and refuse to act on complaints as an individual outside the administration. Mr. Belbin, you had a hold?
Yeah, we get complaints and residents will have complaints or issues or whatnot, and if we follow the chain of command, the way it's stated out there, that everything goes through the town administrator for
if someone says, hey, there's an issue with this, and I know, I'm gonna say, hey, why don't you go see the director of planning department? Okay, if there's an issue with a dog license, you'll see the town clerk. I think that,
Well, it's talking about us, not the citizens.
right, well, they're coming to us asking us
Right.
what we're supposed to do. So, I think that's part of the support of the chain of command, of us being part of that. We are part of the chain of command too. So,
So you have a question, like if someone says, who do I go
right.
to?
See, I think it's a distinction. It's a question whether you're going outside, you're going to the department head yourself versus just directing someone that that's where they should go. I don't think this is prohibiting you from telling them recommending how they can handle
I
it.
want to make sure that was clear that,
No,
That's not very clear, actually.
the intent is, obviously, Mrs. Smith, hey, I got a pothole, call the DPW. There's nothing wrong with that.
Exactly.
Right, I mean,
I mean, versus you calling the DPW and saying, I want that pothole fixed.
right. Or if someone calls and says, hey, I get an issue here with this neighbor, or whatever, issue, or whatever, and I don't feel comfortable going to this person or that person, I've went to them already, and they're not doing anything about it. So my next order of chain of command is say, okay, yeah, well, I'm not gonna go there and say, hey, so-and-so, go do this for me, all right, for this person. I'm gonna say, you go call this person, or whatnot, so.
or you can also go to the administrator and bring it to his or her attention at that time. But to me, the way it reads is that support the administrative chain of command and refuse to act on complaints as an individual. See, that's where I think it's referring to you, not advice that you might give to a citizen that comes to you. I think we all have an obligation. If a citizen comes to us, they come to me all the time and say, I just broke my ball bearings, going through a pothole, and I'll say, give John Woods a call. I'll point them in the right direction. So I think, but again, getting back to the fact that as selectmen, we're really, when we're not in session, we're just citizens, so that, we don't really have any extra authority to tell the department head doesn't have to do what we say anyway. But I think, I think that's what that's trying to get to. To me, I mean, I read it, it's instructing us not to act as if we're in charge of the departments, but in terms of helping people.
Corrective action ourselves.
But Jeff's comment, putting there as individual board member, helps clarify that even more. So after the word individual, you said that board member.
So say, as an individual board member outside the administration, does that make it clearer?
Yeah.
Because, Bob, I think, in the beginning, when Jeff was going through, the different roles of the jobs of the Board of Selectmen, is that the third one was solve problems that can't be solved elsewhere. So, as a citizen, you're telling somebody to go meet with the DPW director. If they're not satisfied with the DPW, that citizen should then be said, well, I'm not happy with what happened there, then they go to the town administrator. If it can't be resolved there, then that's when the Board of Selectmen should take an issue up that hasn't been able to be solved at a lower level. The same thing when people complain about a building. Well, have you gone to the Council on Aging? No, I don't want to talk to them. Well, you need to talk to them and share your concerns with them, because that's who the town, has overseeing the COA building. And then if they're not happy with that and they've tried to go there, then go to the town administrator. If that hasn't happened, then come to the Board of Selectmen. So that kind of creates the process for people to go through.
So you feel better by putting in, individual selectmen outside?
Individual board member.
I think,
Boardman, okay.
I also think that everybody's on the same page here, that there's no disagreement if a citizen calls up and complains and you point them in X direction. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
You're elected.
But this makes it.
Versus calling up the department head and say, I want this fixed. That's a no-no.
So I would make a motion that we make that change. We add board member after individual.
There a second?
I'll second.
Further discussion? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we will move to D. Not, well, let me read it, Bob.
I'm sorry.
Not give instructions to or request assistance from town department heads, but rather channel all such activities through the full board and town administrator.
All right, so,
Sort of ties back to the other one a little bit.
yeah, but also if you look at, on the next page, under B, 4B,
it's kind of a conflicting language there for that one, because it's telling us to go to department heads.
Well, may I recommend that we take care of this one first,
Okay.
and then we make changes to whatever, 4B when we get to that one?
Yeah.
Because I think, I agree with you, I think that one needs, 4B needs some clarification.
I agree also.
So are you okay with D then, the way it reads, Bob?
Yeah.
Because again, D is focused on instructions for direct assistance.
Right, and I agree, I don't wanna give, I wouldn't wanna go to an employee and say, hey, can you do this research for me, which is taking away from their job of actually doing their job
Exactly.
for it, and that interferes with the good order of their department, so, and I agree with that, so.
All right then, going back to number 2, is there a motion to approve number 2, A, B, C, and D as amended?
Motion to approve as amended.
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Number 3, a member of the Board of Selectmen, in his or her relations with fellow board members, should, A, recognize the action at official legal meetings as binding and that he or she alone cannot bind the board outside of such meetings. B, not make statements or promises of how he or she will vote on matters that will come before the board until he or she has had the opportunity to hear the pros and cons of the issue during the board meeting. C, uphold the intent of executive session and respect the privileged communication that exists in executive session. D, make decisions only after all facts on a question have been presented and discussed. E, refrain from communicating the position of the Board of Selectmen to such entities as reporters or state officials unless the full board has previously agreed on both the position and the language of the statement conveying the statement. F, treat with respect the rights of all members of the board despite differences of opinion. G, refrain from speaking negatively about a fellow member of the Board of Selectmen, whether verbally or written.
All right, I'll look a hold on that one.
Okay? We'll go to G. We're going to G.
Okay. So, when you say speaking negatively about a fellow board member, I mean, what about speaking negatively about their position on a subject or whatnot?
No problem.
I mean,
I think the intent is more, you know,
Avoiding
the
personal
debate at the
attacks.
table, the debate at the table, in my view, was a wide open debate. I adamantly disagree with you, you're wrong, this is the worst thing for the town. That's separate than bad-mouthing somebody out in the public after the fact.
So let's say,
You can have a legitimate disagreement at the table, as long as you're not saying you're an idiot. you
so why
know.
don't we say that then?
That's probably a bad example, but
Okay, but,
Why don't we be very specific then? Because the way it reads is refrain from speaking negatively. And I think Bob's right.
I'd say beyond the debate of the, or some language like that. I mean, that's why there's 5 people to debate and disagree. You can disagree and you can be respectful about it, but you shouldn't be down the coffee shop and saying so-and-so is, you know, such and such.
yeah, I mean,
How can we add some language to make that clear? Because that's not really clear.
It's almost a fellow board member personally.
I mean, to me, speaking negatively about a fellow board member is different from speaking negatively about a fellow board member's position.
I agree.
Right.
I mean, can you suggest some wording, Sarah, that you think you'd be more comfortable with?
I don't know. I mean, what do you think, Bob?
I would say negatively outside or beyond the debate or the discussion at the board meeting or something like that.
Beyond the scope of what was discussed
Well,
at the
I mean,
board meeting?
But even when you're having a disagreement, you're still not supposed to, you're really negative about their position, not their person.
Right.
Yeah, the word personally
What?
somewhere?
personally attack,
What?
maybe personally attack.
If we said something like refrain from speaking negatively about a fellow member of the board or selectmen personally, would that?
Right, 'cause
Negatively, I would say on a personal level.
Personally?
Yeah, on a personal level.
So refrain from speaking negatively on a personal level about a fellow member of the Board of Selectmen, whether written or verbal.
That's fine.
Negatively on a personal level. You getting all this, Elaine?
She's doing fine, just leave her alone.
I was not verbally attacking Elaine. I was simply asking whether or not she was getting all this.
And I'll go into his Facebook if I think I get something else.
Okay.
Is there a motion to approve G as, or to approve the amendment to G? There a second?
I second it.
Further discussion? Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
I move we approve 3A through G as amended.
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we go to number 4. Same process. A member of the Board of Selectmen, in his or her relations with town staff, should treat all staff as professionals with clear, honest communication that respects the abilities, experiences, and dignity of the individual. B, limit contact to specific town staff. Questions of town staff and/or requests for additional background information should be directed to the town administrator, only to the town administrator, administrative assistant to the Board of Selectmen, or department heads. The office of the town administrator should be copied on all requests or correspondence.
Hold.
All right. Mark, I guess you and I are out on this one. C, okay. All right, I'm gonna put a hold on B. C, never publicly criticize an individual employee. Concerns about staff performance should only be made to the town administrator through private conversation. D, limit requests for staff support and ensure that all requests go through the town administrator's office. E, ensure that any events materials or information provided to the selectman's office be made available to all selectmen in a timely manner. What is that specifically referring to?
And everybody has.
Yeah, you don't give something to just
Oh, okay.
one or two.
Equal access to information.
All right.
That's what I see.
I guess I'm just thinking,
Yeah, but it may not be information
Okay.
they're going to take action on until the meeting, but they should be at least aware of it so they can prepare themselves for the meeting.
Okay, we all have a hold on B. So,
I'll open that one up myself.
Yeah, because
Okay.
actually, I'd like you to.
It just, in the other one it says, we gotta do it one way, that we're not supposed to talk to the department heads. And then this one here says, we talk to the department heads. So,
This one says we can only talk to them.
we can, right,
well, I thought what this is trying to get at is don't talk to the employees, I think is what it was trying to get at. We shouldn't be telling employees what to do.
And I think I know, I'm going to guess what Bob's is, and I think I know Sarah's big problem with it, is because that's making it sound like we can't ever talk to an employee. Now, how can you, and where I run into a problem with that would be when it's time to do evaluation of the town administrator. We have, some of your best input can come from other members, the worker bees, the ones that don't get to, come before us or don't want to come before us. And also that can be done in a more private.
I mean, everybody's gonna talk to employees. This is a small town.
Yeah, I know.
The question is, are you gonna direct them to do something?
No, that you can't do.
Versus,
That's not what this is.
I know that, that's why I'm looking at this and saying, you walk into town hall, hi Mary, how you doing? How's your day?
No, this is really talking about talking to your employees. It's not hi Mary, how you doing? And it's also not,
But you're not asking for info, you're not asking them to do work.
no, nobody's asking them to do work. The way I'm reading this is that we can't really talk to them, and I don't see how we can conduct our business if we don't know how things really are with our town employees. Not, hi, how's your day
If I
going?
could just address that just for a second, just because you used the word can't, which is an absolute. This is not saying that. This is limiting contact to specific town staff. And it's really that when you have the department heads, so even on the previous page, again, just to clarify, that was not give instruction or request assistance. I think we're all clear on that. On the second page is that before you go to staff people asking them questions in detail about a project that they may not be fully informed about, you should respect and go through their department head or the assistant town administrator or the town administrator. Because if you're trying to get information from, certain staff people, they may not have it all, and they may not be able to give you the full story because they only have the pieces available to them, but they feel obligated to give you this piece of information, but you're only getting part of the story. So again, this was not an absolute when this was written 5 years ago. It's just limit, but go through the department heads. And I do have one change that needs to be made. The administrative assistant to the Board of Selectmen, that title should be amended to assistant town administrator. That change should be done anyway, but, again, I just need to clarify, there's nothing that excludes discussion with any town staff in this town by this statement. And if it needs to be rewritten, that's great, but the purpose is to use the department head that has the full story.
That's a good answer, Michael, but I don't think that that's what's being talked about here. I don't think we're talking about, say, going to the planning director and asking about the latest solar project. That's not what we're talking about here. You brought it up, Alan. If we want to know how's it going in your department, what's the morale? Do you have enough staff? Do you have enough hours in the day?
Right, because I knew that's what you were getting at, but by the same token, though, it has to be taken with a grain of salt, because you just can't, because you may have, let's face it, I think we have 1 or 2 disgruntled employees. I think most towns do, most business entities do, and you could go to one, and basically they could just rip to shreds not only their direct manager, but also the assistant town administrator, not that anyone would do that to you, or the town administrator, which they might. So could we word this somewhere that, you at least need to go through the department head first, so, just to let the department head have an idea, say, look, I just need to know how things are going on. That should not frighten a department head. That's just letting them know, because you don't know what their workload is right now. They may be in a critical crunch period to get something done. So just by touching base with the department head, I think that's just a common courtesy to say, look, I gotta go ahead and I need to talk to X or whoever it is.
So what if
But we have to word it that way.
What if person X has, and I'm just making this up, just hypothetical, has an issue with their department head, or with selectmen's policies, or with the town administrator, or with, heaven help us, Elaine? Who do they go to?
Well, that
Is it a selectman's?
Following a chain of command. If they're having a problem with their department head, then the next up the chain would be him. Then if they're still not getting anything, then it's got to come to us. Sure, yes, go right ahead.
I get the point you guys are getting at. Just on a whole, if you look at the retention of town hall employees, the amount of employees that have been there almost 10 years or longer is, I don't know, percentage, maybe 95% of our town hall right now. So I'm not sure exactly what you're getting at, but I think if someone became that unhappy, they would look for another job or another opportunity would come up and they'd say, you know what, it's going to
I'm out of here.
We have had employees that have told me personally they have had job offers from other towns for more money and they refuse them. So, when you hear of an employee being unhappy, like Alan said, you don't know what's happening at that point in time in their job. Are they doing a big project and they're working extra hours? Maybe things are going well, they just came back from a vacation. You don't know, it all depends on what day and time you're talking to them. But I think if you look overall at our retention, that should speak volumes. I'm not sure why you would need to speak to anybody personally about that. I think if anybody hated their boss that much or hated the way things were going that much, they would leave. That's just my personal opinion, and being HR, that's my outlook.
And there are procedures for people to go up the chain of command, whether it's department head or going around their department head to HR to address these issues. But again, the staff person isn't going to understand what the demands are of the department to say if they need more hours or less hours. They're going to be giving a task that the department manager is dealing with. And I guess the other component here is that, you know, the selectmen get the opportunity to, when we do department heads, that, you know, you guys have a vote to accept or to veto the department heads within the 15 days. But, you know, all of the other appointments in town operate under the bylaws, which is not under the direct control and oversight of the Board of Selectmen. But again, there is a process for them to go through HR if there are issues.
So we need to come up, what I'm trying to get at, we should be able to come up with a way to write this so that everybody agrees with this, because I agree with Bob and Sarah that, you know, this is a little ambiguous the way it's written. It leaves too much wiggle room, or better, more appropriately, not enough wiggle room in it. It's trying to be too limiting the way it's written.
Yeah, if you talk to a staff person and they haven't conveyed that to a department head, and all of a sudden you pull out a memo, well, the staff person said this and the department head said X, and it's not fair to the whole organizational structure. And that's why, to Alan's point, if this needs to be rewritten, I think the intent's clear. I think we're in agreement with the intent.
Right.
Just figuring out, can it be worded differently?
Yeah, I mean, to me, when I read this, I think part of what it's trying to avoid is, you know, let's say we had a future member of the Board of Selectmen that wanted to, you know, undermine a department head or assistant town administrator or town administrator, and they almost go and start seeding discontent among the employees or something. I think that's what that's what it's trying to capture in here, so that, again, I think we're all on the same page, just trying to figure out how to write it so that it's...
Well, again, maybe it should actually say that. If that's the intent, maybe it should say that.
Say,
What Ron just said. You know, we're not allowed to go talk to employees to sow discord and discontent. If that's what you think it is.
I mean, when I've looked at it, to me, that's what it was trying to avoid, was, you know, selectmen getting into the weeds
And I couldn't
in
agree
town
with that.
departments.
Selectmen shouldn't get into the weeds. I agree with that. But that's not what this says.
Can I throw out a suggestion? Since we're all basically understanding and agreeing to the same thing, but we all agree that B is terribly worded, why don't we just take B out for now? And we can always put it back in later after we've had time to properly rewrite it?
I think it's important to keep something in here for B, and it's really the first 6 words. It sounds like what the issue is. And, you know, the rest of the sentence, questions of town staff and a request for additional information should be directed, you know, only to the town administrator, the administrative assistant, or to the department head. So that it does provide some protocol for going to town staff. When you're requesting information, again, this is focused on requesting additional
what if it's
information.
talking, it doesn't say you can't,
Right.
right?
What if we took out the first limit contact to specific town staff? Does that help at all?
Yeah, if you say the select board should not approach staff to find out if there is discord or discontent amongst staff, is that what you're trying to get at?
Add that to
No, put it in place of.
That's not what Ron said. Ron said that the select board should not be trying to sow discontent.
We shouldn't, the select.
We should be
Right.
trying to, not finding out if there is discord in the department, that's very different, but that's, probably he didn't say it real well. That's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not,
Engagement in there with that statement, and this is all supposed to be kind of relatively.
So let me ask you a question. The idea is you want to be able to have a comfortable conversation with people, correct?
Correct.
So if you take out, limit the staff, and it says, if you have questions about information in the chain of command, if you just have general questions and comments, who says you can't? Doesn't say that.
Doesn't say that.
Well, it does say that the administrator should be copied on all requests to correspond.
Yeah, but what if you're just having a conversation?
That's my question.
Well, you can, it doesn't say you can't, right?
Well, it says
Well,
administrator
questions
should
If
or
you're asking
be
requests for
copied
additional
on all.
background information, I mean,
Versus,
if I say I go up to the assessor's office, I go to the assessor's office, I ask him a question, hey, what's up with these properties here, and what do you have for information for those?
right,
Okay, so if I would have to go to the department head to get that information,
or.
copy it to the town administrator?
And copy it to the town.
See, I think to me, that's different, because you could be doing that as an individual citizen. You could go to the assessor's office and ask for that information.
It says here, we have to do it this way.
I'm trying to make the distinction as to what it's getting at. Is it,
But if I'm gonna use that, if I'm gonna use that information to bring back to the Board of Selectmen, I'm really doing it as a Board of Selectmen to say, hey, this is.
You're
I
doing
found this
research,
is
you're doing research,
Do research.
whatever you call it.
Right, right. I mean,
But again, that gets into a workload issue that you should go through the department head.
yeah, but if I wasn't on the Board of Selectmen, and I wanted to go up to the assessor's office and say, hey, what's going on with these 2 properties, they'd tell me.
He's just
The
another
difference
citizen.
is if it's a selectman that goes up there, they're going to feel obligated to drop everything and do that.
Yeah,
Well, that's on them.
That's up to us to tell them not. We're
Yeah.
standing in line. We can be number 20. Thank you very much. That's what I do. I don't let anybody do anything.
You go up and say, look, when you got the time?
Yeah.
You know, I don't need it now, I don't need it next week, just when you got time.
Yeah, I mean,
Remember that when you asked for something?
I think.
Well, you're the exception to the rule.
Alan, you did that dozens of times. You know, you just go and say, hey, listen, this isn't a priority, but when you get to this, can you take a look at this? And again,
I tell you that a lot. And I try to say it to Elaine.
So is it the first and last sentence that you struggle with?
yeah.
That, hey, I mean, if you are gonna go ask the assessor or something, it'd be nice to ask because I will tell you, people perceive you completely different than every citizen, just because of your position. And so they are gonna drop everything versus if you talk to the department head and say, hey, can I get this information? How hard is that? I think you can accomplish that if you get rid of the first and last sentence. And you know what? He can train his department heads. If the selectmen come in and ask for something, I wanna know about it.
yeah, you drop the first and last sentence and then just train the administrative assistant.
Would that work?
Yeah, I definitely think the last sentence is gonna go.
No, but if you get rid of the first one, it's a question,
Yeah.
the staff should go through this chain, that's all. Does that work for you?
Yeah?
Sarah?
Well, it's
It
better.
doesn't limit your access to talk to people.
That's right.
And as a selectman, you wanna know what's going on. All it says, if you have a, hey, I wanna see that plan of the subdivision is this file, just ask one other person, that's all you have to do. Or pick up the phone before you come down.
Everybody okay with that? I'll make that motion that we drop the first and last sentence.
I'll second it.
And change Elaine's title in the.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Being none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. We go to D.
That just covered my D1, so we're good.
All right.
Anybody else have a problem with it? I have no problem with it.
Does someone want to make a motion?
I make move
To
that
approve
we
4.
approve section 4, A, B, C, D, and E as amended.
Further discussion? Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I
The ayes
move-
have it.
I move we adopt the code of conduct of the Board of Selectmen as amended.
Further discussion? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. And, good God, we come up to the very quick executive session that we need to have.
Just, do we want to talk about just next steps, go back to number 7, Paul? What happens next?
Are we going to get a summary, Jeff, from you?
Right down, right now.
Are we gonna get a summary, Elaine?
Give it to Elaine.
Just say it from Jeff.
Pardon me?
You want this, I'm supposed to give it to my direct supervisor.
What is that?
The conflict of interest.
Town clerk, make sure you keep a copy.
I do have a.
Give that to the assistant town administrator.
Now you have one.
I don't know who's the official record.
Yeah, and Bob, I'm not your direct supervisor.
And for the selectmen, that goes to the town clerk.
Yeah, I gave her one, so I just want to make sure everyone has it.
We like
Yeah.
to keep
Now, Bob, I just want to be very clear, I am not your direct supervisor.
All right.
Okay?
Oh, thank you.
It's easy for us to grab it, it's for the selectmen, and the witness to look at it, just takes a look at it. Because sometimes people ask.
You know, I can't, if I'm in the way, I can email it to you.
That'll be fine.
That'd
Yeah.
probably be the best thing.
Perhaps put 7 on the next agenda.
If you can get your summary to us early next week, okay, and then Elaine gets a summary, then we have time to, and then if all the board could just send their ideas for the next agenda, and we'll get it set up, and should be good. All right,
Thank you.
thank you. Appreciate it.
So thank you all for indulging.
Did it get cold in here? I
Yeah.
was very warm earlier, and now I'm about an icicle.
Thank you for
Did you play with
indulging
the
me
temperature,
on the
Michael?
code of conduct and going through it step by step. But I really wanted to get that so we could all get on board with it.
Michael, thank you. I'll be in touch.
Not quite.
Not quite.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Dunham.
I move that we we enter into executive session pursuant to General Law C-38, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation, Town of Carver versus David Zadok, Plymouth Superior Court Case number 163, CV00423. And the chair must state,
Pardon me?
and you must state,
Oh, it is my opinion that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the board. Does someone want to make a motion to go, oh, that was a motion to go executive session.
Second.
All right, this calls for a roll call vote, starting with Mr. Dunham.
Alan Dunham says aye.
Sarah Hewen says that.
Robert Belvin says aye.
Mark Townsend says aye.
Ron Clark says aye. We are now in executive session. Thank you for joining us. Go Bruins.
And we'll be adjourning at the end of executive session.
And we'll be adjourning at the end of executive session into open session for the
adjourn.
purpose of adjournment. Bath-